Story 1. My wife of 33 years threw our marriage away by cheating on vacation. I'm getting divorced and surprisingly content being single again. I was married for 33 years. I'm a 55-year-old male, and my wife is also 55. We have 2 kids and 2 grandkids, and we love them dearly. Background. We met at a nightclub back in the 80s where I was working as a bouncer. We went out for a date, and 2 months later we moved in together. 2 years later we were married. We had a good life, work, play, having children. I went from a very active job to a sedate job and put on a lot of weight, to the extent that I couldn't even finish making love as I would get an asthma attack. We tried different things to spice up our love-making life and were always monogamous. I had been cheated on in the past, so infidelity was a red line that my wife and I never crossed. We loved each other and thought we would die together. 33 years married is a long time, but I loved her more after every year that passed. After 20 years of a dead bedroom, I made a decision to lose the weight. So, after 2 years, I lost 80 kilograms, 176 pounds, and had a tummy tuck. I know it sounds vain, but there were 3 main reasons. 1. So I could see my grandkids grow up. 2. My health, obviously. 3. To rekindle our sexy life. And it did. For the last 2 years, we made love about 3 or 4 times per week, and my wife enjoyed every second of it. I knew this because her body doesn't lie. So we were in a position where we could enjoy our lives with each other. She still says she is in love with me and I with her. I have never cheated on her, and I know she had never cheated on me. It's just one of those things. Well, that was until 3 days ago. She went on a holiday with her 2 sisters, headed off interstate with them. I had no problem with this as I trusted her, but she knew that cheating was a deal breaker with us, and even after 33 years it still is. We had a relationship where nothing was hidden. We had apps on our phones where we could see each other's whereabouts. This had nothing to do with a lack of trust, just simple safety. No phones were hidden, and we both had access to our messages and emails. Trust was never an issue. When I lost my weight and started to look better, I did gain more attention from women, but I always brushed it off as I was happily married. My wife would comment that she felt a little insecure now that I was being found attractive by others and she had put some weight on. This never worried me as I love her no matter what she looks like. I tell her daily I love her and how beautiful she is. Our lovemaking is amazing, and I am regretful that we didn't try hard enough earlier on. Anyway, I had just finished work and was heading home when I got a phone call from my wife. She was very upset and asked me if my sister-in-law had spoken to me. I said, "No, why?" I asked what was wrong, never thinking that I would hear what she was about to say. She told me she cheated and had sex with another man. She is so sorry. She didn't know what came over her. I was shocked and my heart just broke. I sat in my car, numb, while she continued. She said her sisters and her were having a few drinks and a married couple joined them. They drank until 2 a.m., and her sisters had already left to go back to their room. The bar closed, and she told me that she was very drunk and went with a couple to their room to keep drinking and talking. They both were very complimentary and kept telling my wife how sensual she was and how her husband was a lucky man. The man then started to touch her, and the wife encouraged them both. They told her no one would know and to just enjoy it. She said she felt that it wasn't even her, but she made love with a husband while the wife watched. In the morning when she woke up, she was in bed with both of them asleep and ran back to her room. Her sister caught her, and she told her everything. Her sister told her she had to tell me or she would. She told me all this while sobbing over the phone and begging for my forgiveness. I was just numb. How could she just throw away our lives? She was crying and kept saying she is so sorry and she hates herself. How much she loves me and made a terrible mistake. I told her she didn't make a mistake. She made a decision. I then hung up on her and turned off my phone. I went home and just sat in a chair trying to work out what was going to happen now. I cried over the loss of my wife as I knew her in the years we had together. I cried over the loss of our future together and the effect her decision will have on our family. My life as I knew it was over. I shut myself off for the last 2 days and then turned my phone back on. Needless to say, there were hundreds of messages from her and her sisters. The last one was she is on her way home. My kids have also tried to contact me as their mother was ringing them to see if I was all right and if they had heard from me. I rang my kids and told them what happened and that I am as okay as can be expected, but I will be leaving home to go sort myself out before she gets home. I asked them not to tell her where I am going, but I need to come to grips with the end of my marriage. I have just sent a text to my soon-to-be ex-wife telling her we are getting a divorce and I don't want to hear from her. I don't care about the details and I now don't care about her. The pain is incredible. I would never have thought that her love could have been destroyed so quickly. Update 1. I may ramble a bit, but I have a lot going through my mind, and it keeps jumping from one thing to another. Couple of clarifications. Our dead bedroom wasn't completely dead, but compared to the last 2 years, it seems so. The active job I had was in the military, and I got injured on a training exercise which led to a desk job, then medical discharge, and then my wife and I bought a small business together. Now, before I speak to my wife, I have spoken at length to my sister-in-law and her husband. The story my wife gave me was certainly different to the one she gave me when she first confessed. My kids were horrified about what happened and just want to support me. I've explained to them that though they may be angry with their mother, she is still their mother and the grandmother of their kids. She loves them, and what she did to our marriage does not change that. My wife and her sisters did cut the holiday short and came home. I left a note for my wife telling her to pack and go stay at her mother's. She did this. The details of how it went down are much worse than what my wife told me. Though she confessed under the threat of being exposed, she didn't tell the truth. No surprise there. My wife broke down to her sister and apparently told her everything. I won't know what to believe until I sit down with my wife. The story she told her sister went like this. She loves me and loves our marriage. She never expected to do this. She blames our active lovemaking life we have had over the last 2 years for exploring what else she had been missing. She felt this way because she was always the attractive one in the relationship, but now she believes the roles are reversed. She was insecure and needed to be wanted by someone else. She swears it was the first time, but she did plan it. It was a fantasy she acted on. She was scratching an itch and was never going to tell me. Unbeknownst to her sisters, the couple she met were interstate customers of ours. I haven't met them, but my wife spoke with them all the time over the phone. My wife went for drinks to meet up with them, but her sisters tagged along, so they pretended to be strangers until they left. She did drink but was not falling down drunk. All three had this plan before they went away. My wife is coming around this afternoon to talk. Apparently, she is beside herself as to what will happen. I already know what I will do. She chose to cheat, but everyone will feel the repercussions of it. Already the truth about her cheating, though it makes it more devastating to me, makes my resolve stronger. I didn't cheat. I didn't force her to lie. Her feelings that she has lost me and her marriage are spot on. And I don't give a crap how miserable she is. She did this, no one else. But we will now all have to deal with it. We are over and will have to navigate our changed lives. Update 2. I had the talk with my wife yesterday. After so many years together, we both find that we don't sleep very well without the other beside us. It's been like that for decades. Well, last night was the first night that I had a very good night's sleep without her there. She came around home and walked through the door. She looked terrible. Lack of sleep, guilty, scared, and red-eyed. Normally, my heart would break, and I would make her feel better, but not this time. I was sitting at the table, and she started to cry again and rushed in for a hug, blubbering she effed up, and is so sorry, etc. I put my hand up and told her not to touch me and to sit down. She sat down. I asked if she wanted a coffee as I was going to make one, and she accepted. So I made the coffee and went back to the table. Her eyes never left me. She started to speak, but I told her to be quiet and answer my questions and listen. This isn't about her but me and the marriage. I told her at this point we were done. She had made her choice and this is about making mine. I had already made my choice, but I wanted to get some semblance of truth out of her, and I thought if she thought she had a chance, she would at least be a little honest. I told her I had spoken with her sister, which was true, and I had spoken with the couple, which wasn't true, but she didn't know that. I had the strangest feelings inside of me. Happy that she was so upset but sad for us at the same time, along with disappointment anger, and all the normal emotions you would have, but I was calm, and this freaked her out the most. Honestly, I felt I was doing a job interview. I asked her how many times. She said physically once and twice on video chat. I told her to explain how it happened. She told me that when they were talking business, it turned to flirting. Then when the wife said it was okay and got involved, over a couple of months, it moved on to watching them make love. She told them that it has always been a fantasy of hers to make love while the wife watched, and they were all for it. She was crying when she told me this and said it went awry. She knew it was dangerous, which made it more exciting for her. She started to tell me that she felt insecure, but before she could continue, I told her I don't want to hear her crappy excuses and justifications. I had to wait about 5 minutes until she could pull herself together. I even got up and got her tissues. She said they met up as arranged, and after her sisters had left the bar, they went straight to the couple's room. I asked her if she ever intended to tell me, and she said no, it was just a fantasy that she thought she could fulfill and never think about cheating again. I called crap and asked if she had cheated over the last 33 years. She said never. I told her that now it didn't matter how many times she cheated, either once or 1,000 times, the result would still be the same. The only one it will hurt if she is lying is our kids and her relationship with them and our grandkids. I told her I don't believe her, but at this point it's irrelevant. At this, she started to realize I had no intention of working through her infidelity. She begged me to work on our marriage. She would do anything. I could do anything. She would let me have affairs if I stayed. She promised she would never cheat again. I told her to listen to what she was saying. She has degraded herself enough. I would never cheat in a marriage, and if I did sleep with another woman, it would mean we were separated with no chance of reconciliation. This is the last thing on my mind. She reached over to try and grab my hand, but I told her that I will never touch her again. It's not that I am judgmental of anyone's lifestyle. It's their own business, and I understand people do have affairs, open marriages, etc. But the point is, we didn't. The trust and respect were destroyed when she planned to have another man's crap inside her. I have always been a pragmatic man, and I just felt relief. I told her we will make this as easy on us as we can. She took this as hope for our relationship, but I told her, no, we are done. I will never touch you again. And I meant it. I could never forget that she effed another man, and the woman I loved and married is now dead to me. She died when you not only effed another man but planned for it. All the good memories we have will remain. The holidays, building our first home together, having and bringing up our children, all the laughs in life we faced together are just that, memories. We are now going to have separate lives, and I, for one, am looking forward to seeing what happens, and they will not include you. When I do meet another woman, I hope to start new memories with her and hope that I do find love again. She was shaking and crying when I told her this, but it didn't faze me. I just wanted this woman out of my house. She couldn't continue with the talk, so I went down to the shed and reached out to my kids by phone while she composed herself. I told them what was happening, and they were very supportive and said to not drag it on and just finish it. I went back up, and as soon as I walked through the door, she started again with the sorry, and we can make this work. I sat down and said we are going to sell the house and business and split everything 50-50ths. You can have the car and I will take the truck and my motorcycle. She can take the cats. I then told her not to ring me, text me, or contact me in any way unless it's about the kids or grandkids. I will contact the lawyers and start the ball rolling for the divorce, and she is free to go F anyone she wants as she is now a free woman. She told me that she didn't want to F anyone else, and I was being deliberately mean and unemotional. I told her that I was being honest, and her actions had put me in an emotional void. I told her that she is the only one to blame for the destruction of our marriage and no one else. I loved her unconditionally, and she is the one who effed it up. I then left the house so she could sort herself out and take a few more things with her, and went over to my daughter's. I stayed there for a few hours talking with her and played with my granddaughter. When I got home, she had left, and as I said, I had the best night's sleep without her I have ever had. Now to see what happens over the next 6 months or so. Update 3. Well, it's been 5 hectic weeks since the soon-to-be ex-wife threw away our marriage. I have had a lot of time to reflect on my decision, and I still believe I have made the right one. I could never trust her again. I could never touch her again. Seriously, it makes me sick to even think about it. It was her decision to cheat and destroy our marriage for no reason than she thought she could get away with it. She is still staying with her mother, and I had been getting the house ready for sale. We had been in this house for 20 years, so a lot of crap needed to be done and cleared out, but I did it and we put it on the market. There are a couple of eager buyers, so I'm hopeful it will be sold in the next week or two. The business has already been sold, thankfully. One of our clients wanted to expand, and I accepted the offer last week. Settlement will take place in about a month. You always hear about divorce, but it is already a pain in the backside. Where I live, you have to be separated for 12 months and 1 day before you can file for divorce. Then it takes 4 months before it goes through, and that's only if it's uncontested. Property settlement is a separate issue and is not done until the divorce is finalized. I don't plan on having anything left of our joint possessions left to settle, and as long as she continues to sign the sales contracts, it will make my life a lot easier to move on. Her way of thinking is different, though. My son has only spoken to her once, and apparently it was not a nice phone call. To be clear, my children are grown adults with children of their own. I told him it will take time, but she is still his mother, and she was a good one. Don't let her decision destroy his relationship with her. My daughter, on the other hand, has been talking to her throughout. She is ashamed of what her mother did, but has been supporting her through the breakup. My daughter is a very honest person who tells it like it is and is giving her mother the warts and all repercussions of what she did. My soon-to-be ex-wife, however, is deluded enough to think that I will get over it and forgive her. She thinks that all the years we have been together will be enough to make me change my mind. When she came over to sign the real estate contract, she told me that I will change my mind, that I still love her, and she will be a better wife when I do, and we will still grow old together and have a wonderful life with this as a speed bump in our marriage that we will both get over. I was gobsmacked. I just looked at her and said she was effing nuts to think any of that. She lied and cheated in the worst way. She had another man's crap inside her. She put another man's crap while his own wife watched. How the hell would I even want to touch her again? She said she knew she shouldn't have gone through with it. She didn't know what she was thinking. It wasn't even that good. I told her to shut up, that I didn't want to hear if she enjoyed it or not. The point is she effing did it. I told her that we have zero hope of reconciliation. I want nothing to do with her, and I am looking forward to getting on with my life without her. I think she is in massive denial about what is happening, and she no longer has any control over my actions or is entitled to her scheming, and cheating undid a loving marriage. Her actions are why this is happening. She knew this before she did what she did, so she can't be so naive to think it's not happening because it is. The funny thing is that I'm getting a fair amount of attention from other women now. I am certainly not interested in having anything to do with women at this time, but it's nice to know that when I do, I will have plenty of options. The soon-to-be ex-wife even got angry that women we know have been over to visit and bring me dinner, just to talk, of course. She told me she wants me to get it out of my system, and she will be waiting. I mean, seriously, how effed up is she? The only thing I want out of my system is her. Emotions are still a major factor. Hate, anger, disgust, the feeling of loss, betrayal, and sadness. But I am a strong man and I will deal with them. My goal now is to focus on getting rid of any financial entanglement with my wife and get on with my life. Update 4. 3 months down the track, and I have moved things very quickly. Business was sold. House is sold. Legally separated, waiting for the divorce waiting period. But for all intents and purposes, I have separated all our joint assets and am starting on the road in my new life. I would never have thought that I would be where I am today. 3 months ago, I had the life I wanted. A loving wife, self-employed, great family and friends, nice home. I was looking forward to having my wife with me for the rest of our lives. Then my soon-to-be ex-wife effed it all up for her and for our family by lying, cheating, and being disloyal. We had our problems, like every long-term couple, but we always stayed true to each other. When she got caught, it destroyed me. The loss of our lives together was devastating, and I could not fathom why she did this. But this is where my life changed for me. It was not what I wanted but was decided for me by my cheating wife. I am a pragmatic man who has always had strong family values, and this has made the transition to where I am now easy for me. I have made the decision to not let my feelings make me wallow in self-pity, and I refuse to act the victim. It gets you nowhere. With the sale of the family home and the business, after splitting everything equally with the soon-to-be ex-wife, I had enough to buy 2 small units near my grandchildren. My son and daughter live in different states with their partners and kids. I did this because I want my own space but be close enough to visit. I am still working as a previous business competitor offered me a part-time role, which I have taken up. It still gives me a lot of free time to start enjoying life again. There was a couple of weeks that I didn't have anything to do, so I jumped on the bike and went riding. No destination, just stopped for coffee and sightseeing. Stopped at pubs at night and enjoyed a couple of drinks before heading off the next day. What has surprised me is how the whole casual relationship scene with women is, and I must say, I'm liking it. Hooked up with a couple of women over the 2 weeks with no expectations, just lovemaking and fun with no emotional baggage. I am surprised how well I'm feeling. A few people have asked me if I ever contacted the couple that my wife cheated with. No, I see no need, nor do I have any desire to. It was my soon-to-be ex-wife's decision to cheat on me, not theirs. I want no contact with them. They mean nothing to me. Honestly, the best revenge against a cheating partner is a display of apathy and just get on with your own life. Sure, you still think about what happened, but life goes on. Concentrate on yourself. My soon-to-be ex-wife is apparently still deluded and thinks once I calm down and get sick of not having her there, I will take her back. I have told her in no uncertain terms that our marriage is over with no chance of reconciliation. I also told her I no longer care what the F she does or who she does it with. It no longer has anything to do with me, just as whatever I do no longer has anything to do with her. My daughter told me that her mother is still in denial and is very sad and embarrassed for what she did, and she wants her to convince me to take her back. I told my daughter that will never happen, as she is only sad and embarrassed because she got caught, and I followed through with leaving her. Life is certainly different than I expected, but I am really looking forward to the future now. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Mill stole my wife's savings and jewelry, but my wife still defended her and demanded I buy her new ones. When I refused, Mill broke my window and got arrested. My situation with my wife, Carol, and her mother, Eleanor, has been steadily deteriorating for years. It's a slow, grinding kind of problem, the type that eats away at you bit by bit. It's reached a breaking point, and I genuinely don't know what the next step should be. It all boils down to Eleanor's seemingly limitless sense of entitlement and Carol's complete inability to address it or even acknowledge it. Really. To understand the dynamic, you need some background. I met Carol about 6 years ago through a mutual friend at a work function. She was immediately open and honest about her family's financial history, which I appreciated. She explained that her family had once been extremely wealthy. They had a huge house in an exclusive neighborhood, multiple expensive cars. A lifestyle that, frankly, I could barely imagine. But according to Carol, a series of bad investments coupled with consistently poor financial decisions led to them losing almost everything. She described her parents, Eleanor and Richard, as having extravagant tastes. They'd buy things they clearly couldn't afford, boats, sports cars, and take out loans they couldn't realistically repay. This cycle of debt continued, she said, until they were forced to sell their mansion and move into a much smaller condo. Despite all this, Carol maintained that her parents had done their best. She insisted they had provided her with everything she could ever want. But the story she told me over time revealed a drastically different reality. A reality that honestly made it hard for me to sympathize with her parents. My wife's 17th birthday incident was particularly telling. Carol had received a considerable amount of cash as gifts from various family members. Eleanor, according to Carol, essentially coerced her into handing over the money. She used guilt, saying she needed the money more than Carol did, that Carol didn't understand the pressures of running a household. Later, Carol found out that Eleanor had used that money to get a professional perm. When Carol, understandably upset, confronted her mother. Eleanor's response was chilling in its casual cruelty. She told Carol that she had provided food, shelter, and clothing for her all her life, and therefore she was entitled to the money. Carol's father, Richard, was in many ways even worse. He had a child outside of his marriage with Eleanor and was legally obligated to pay child support. However, when Carol got her first job, Richard started demanding that she contribute to these payments. He'd pressure her constantly, saying he couldn't afford it, that she needed to help the family. He would also regularly ask Carol to buy him things for their condo. A new, larger television, a state-of-the-art refrigerator, even though the ones they had were perfectly functional. If Carol ever refused or even hesitated, Richard would apparently become aggressive. He'd threaten to smash her phone, her laptop, the few possessions she had that were truly her own. Carol told me these stories with a kind of detached sadness, like she'd long since accepted this behavior as normal. It was only after she moved out of her parents' condo and found her own small apartment that she began to experience any real independence, any sense of control over her own life. My own upbringing was the polar opposite. My parents, John and Mary, were the salt of the earth. We weren't poor, but we certainly weren't wealthy. We lived in a modest, working-class neighborhood. Dad worked as a mechanic at a local garage, a job he'd held for over 30 years. Mom worked at the bakery down the street, making donuts and pastries. They worked hard, incredibly hard, to provide for me. They scrimped and saved to make sure I had everything I needed for school. They never complained, never made me feel like I was a burden. Years later, after I'd finished college and landed a good job, I managed to save up a significant amount of money. My biggest goal, the thing I dreamed of for years, was to buy my parents a house. A small, comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood. It was their lifelong dream, something they never thought would be possible. When I finally did it, when I handed them the keys, my dad actually tried to refuse. He said it was too much, that I shouldn't be spending my money on them. It took a lot of convincing, a lot of heartfelt pleading, before he finally accepted. They were both in tears. It was one of the best days of my life. After that, they never asked me for a single thing, even though I offered regularly to help them out financially. They both took on small, part-time jobs just to keep themselves busy and to have a little extra spending money. They always insisted, with a kind of quiet dignity, that parents were supposed to take care of their children, not the other way around. So, you can imagine the culture shock I experienced when I first met Carol's parents. It was like entering a completely different world. The first encounter with Eleanor was jarring. We were at a restaurant. Carol had arranged a dinner for us to meet. Eleanor looked me up and down, and the first question out of her mouth was, "So, are you wealthy?" No hello, no nice to meet you, just a direct, blunt inquiry about my financial status. I stammered out something about having a stable job and earning a decent income. After that initial meeting, Eleanor made it her mission to learn as much as possible about my finances. She'd ask probing questions, always circling back to money. She wanted to know about my insurance policies, my investment portfolio, my retirement savings. It was incredibly intrusive, and it made me deeply uncomfortable. I expressed my concerns to Carol, and she did, to her credit, talk to her mother. She asked Eleanor to stop, but Eleanor simply shifted her tactics. She started asking these questions when Carol wasn't present, cornering me during family gatherings or calling me directly. One particularly memorable instance occurred when I mentioned in passing that I had paid off all my student loans. Eleanor's eyes lit up. She immediately launched into a monologue about how I should be helping Carol pay off her debts, that since I was in such a fortunate position, I had a responsibility to assist her. We were only dating at the time. It was a wildly inappropriate suggestion, and it made me feel like I was being viewed as a walking ATM. I finally firmly told Eleanor that I was not comfortable discussing my personal finances with her, and that I would appreciate it if she would respect my boundaries. The requests for money directed at Carol were constant. Eleanor would call Carol several times a week, sometimes multiple times a day, asking for money. The amounts varied, but they were always significant. $1,000 here, $500 there. The pattern was always the same. Eleanor would call, often in tears, claiming some urgent need, a medical bill, a car repair, a sudden unexpected expense. Carol, ever the dutiful daughter, would express concern but also explain that she was trying to save money, that she couldn't just keep handing over large sums. Eleanor would then launch into a guilt trip, reminding Carol of all the sacrifices she had made for her, promising to pay her back. Of course, the repayments never materialized. If Carol ever dared to bring up the outstanding debts, Eleanor would react with fury. She'd yell at Carol, accuse her of being ungrateful, selfish, of not appreciating everything her parents had done for her. Then, a few hours later, or maybe the next day, she'd call back sobbing, apologizing profusely, claiming she'd been under a lot of stress. And then, inevitably, a few days after that, the cycle would begin again. Another phone call, another urgent request for money. Carol would vent to me about these incidents for hours on end. She'd describe the calls in detail, but, and this was the incredibly frustrating part, if I ever expressed agreement, if I ever dared to criticize Eleanor's behavior, Carol would immediately turn on me. She'd snap at me, saying that she could complain about her mother, but I couldn't, that I didn't understand their family dynamic, that I didn't know what Eleanor had been through. It was a maddening, illogical defense mechanism. Eventually, I reached a point where I simply couldn't listen to it anymore. I told Carol as gently as I could that I loved her, but that I couldn't be her sounding board for these issues anymore. It was too draining, and it was putting a strain on our relationship. When Carol and I decided to get married, the issue of finances, unsurprisingly, became a major point of contention. Carol wanted a lavish wedding. I agreed to pay for it. I had saved diligently and I could afford it. But I also insisted on a prenuptial agreement. It wasn't about a lack of trust in Carol. It was about practicality. I had witnessed firsthand the financial dysfunction of her family, and I wanted to protect myself, to ensure that our marriage started on a solid, financially secure foundation. Carol's reaction was explosive. She was deeply offended, accusing me of not trusting her, of viewing our marriage as a business transaction. She threatened to call off the wedding entirely. She said a marriage should be built on love and trust, not on legal documents and financial calculations. Eleanor, of course, got involved, amplifying Carol's outrage. She called me, berating me for even suggesting a prenup, telling me that their family had honor and integrity, that I had nothing to worry about. It was during this conversation that I finally lost my temper. I pointed out, rather forcefully, that Eleanor had a long history of borrowing money from Carol and never repaying it, that her claim of family honor rang incredibly hollow. Both Carol and Eleanor were furious. Carol packed her bags and left. She moved out of our apartment, telling me that I had insulted her family, that I didn't love her. I was devastated. I tried to explain repeatedly that my intention wasn't to question her loyalty or her commitment, but to safeguard our mutual interests, to ensure that we entered into marriage with clear eyes and clear expectations, free from the shadow of any potential disputes over assets. She wouldn't listen. A week later, she showed up at my doorstep unannounced. She was crying, begging me to take her back. She said she'd made a terrible mistake. She told me that Eleanor and Richard had demanded that she start handing over her paychecks to them so they could manage her finances more effectively. It was then, she said, that she'd finally realized the extent of their manipulation. She agreed to the prenup, and so we reconciled, and the wedding plans continued. The wedding itself was an experience. We had no choice but to invite Eleanor and Richard. It was important to Carol, and I wanted to make her happy. But their presence, and their reaction to the scale of the wedding, marked a turning point. They were visibly shocked by how good the event was. After the wedding, Eleanor's requests for money, which had previously been directed primarily at Carol, started coming directly to me. She'd call me, sometimes several times a week, asking me to buy her things. She'd ask me to cover expenses for services she used, her hair appointments, her dry cleaning, even her grocery bills. Sometimes she'd simply ask for cash, with no explanation given. I tried repeatedly to explain to her that I was not obligated to pay for these things, that I was not her personal bank account. But she'd persist, using guilt, manipulation, and outright begging to try and wear me down. She'd say she was old and frail, that she had no one else to turn to, that as Carol's husband, I had a responsibility to help her. I gave in a few times early on just to keep the peace. I told myself I could afford it, that it wasn't worth the fight. The refrigerator incident was a prime example. One day, Eleanor called me completely out of the blue and demanded that I buy her a new refrigerator. The one she had, she said, was old and ugly, and she wanted a new stainless steel model with all the latest features. I pointed out reasonably that her current refrigerator was perfectly functional, that there was no actual need for a new one. I asked why she wasn't asking Carol or Richard for the money. Her response was infuriating. She said that I had a good income, that I was well off, and therefore I should be responsible for covering some of her expenses. I refused firmly. Eleanor started to cry, sobbing into the phone, telling me how disappointed she was in me, how I was failing in my duties as a husband to my wife. She then called Carol and, using the same manipulative tactics, convinced Carol that if I wouldn't buy her the refrigerator, Carol had to. Carol, earning significantly less than me, would have to dip into her own savings to satisfy her mother's whim. In the end, I relented. I bought Eleanor the damn refrigerator just to shut her up. Then there was the incident with the sweaters. My parents, bless their hearts, had ordered matching sweaters for Carol and me as an anniversary gift. They were hand-knitted with a unique design that my dad had helped create. My dad, excited about the gift, had sent me pictures of the sweaters before they were shipped. When the package arrived, I carefully put it in the garage, intending to surprise Carol on our anniversary. On the day of our anniversary, I went to the garage to retrieve the package. It was gone. I searched everywhere, turning the garage upside down, but it was nowhere to be found. I asked Carol if she'd seen it, if she'd perhaps thrown it away by accident, thinking it was junk mail. She hadn't. The package had simply vanished. It was baffling. A month later, I was visiting Eleanor and Richard at their condo, and there, hanging in their closet, were the sweaters, the hand-knitted, personalized sweaters that my parents had lovingly sent us. I confronted Eleanor, my anger barely contained. She initially denied it, then tried to claim she'd found the package outside near our trash cans. Finally, after questioning, she admitted she'd been at our house, snooping around in the garage, and had seen the package. She said she'd assumed I'd thrown it out, that it was unwanted, so she'd taken it. It was a blatant lie, a clear act of theft. I was furious. I told her in no uncertain terms that she had no right to go through our belongings, that she had stolen from us. Her response was astonishing. She scoffed and said the sweaters were cheap, poorly made, that she'd actually done me a favor by taking them. She said I should be grateful. I told her they were a gift from my parents, that they had sentimental value. It didn't matter. She just didn't get it. I took the sweaters back. Carol and I left immediately. On the way home, I expected Carol to be as outraged as I was. Instead, she defended her mother. She said Eleanor had probably just made a mistake, that I'd overreacted, that I'd embarrassed her. She said Eleanor hadn't meant any harm, that she was probably just confused. Couldn't believe it. Even after Eleanor had been caught red-handed stealing from us, Carol was still making excuses for her. Then Eleanor called Carol, demanding that she buy her a new dishwasher. It was a completely unnecessary expense. Their household consisted of just 2 people, and Richard spent most of his evenings at the local bar, drinking with his friends. Carol tried to reason with her, pointing out the absurdity of the request, but Eleanor was insistent. She said all their neighbors had dishwashers, that she was embarrassed to be the only one on their floor without one. When Carol continued to refuse, Eleanor told Carol that she wished she'd never been born, that any other child would be grateful to have such a generous mother, that Carol was selfish and ungrateful. Carol was devastated. She spent the rest of the evening crying. I had, by this point, stopped speaking to Eleanor directly after the sweater incident. But the next day, I received a text message from her. She said I should step up and help Carol out, that I should buy the dishwasher for her. She had just emotionally abused her daughter, and now she was demanding that I pay for the object that had triggered the whole episode. I ignored the message. I simply couldn't engage. I showed the text to Carol as a kind of, proof, I guess, of her mother's behavior. Carol's reaction was sadly predictable. She told me she'd already used a significant portion of her savings to order the dishwasher for Eleanor. She said she couldn't bear to hear her mother so upset. Richard's death a few months later was a tragic event, but it also brought a new set of complications. He was found unresponsive on a street near their condo after a night of heavy drinking. It was a sudden, shocking loss. Eleanor was understandably devastated, but the situation quickly became even more difficult. It turned out Richard had accumulated a significant amount of debt, including loans from some very questionable individuals, loan sharks, essentially. Eleanor was faced with a mountain of bills and threats of violence if she didn't pay. She had to sell almost everything they owned to settle Richard's debts. She was left with virtually nothing. Carol and I discussed it, and despite all the history, all the problems, we agreed to take Eleanor in. She had nowhere else to go. It felt like the right thing to do, the humane thing to do. I thought maybe this is a chance for a fresh start. Maybe with Richard gone and Eleanor in a more vulnerable position, she would be more reasonable. I welcomed her into our home, genuinely trying to make her feel comfortable. But I started noticing Eleanor going through our belongings when we were out of the house or even just in another room. She'd be rummaging through drawers, closets, boxes. It wasn't blatant. She was careful, but I'd find things slightly out of place. Drawers not quite closed, boxes moved. I confronted her about it several times. Each time, she'd offer the same flimsy excuse. She was just curious. She was just looking around. I asked Carol to talk to her, to set some boundaries. Carol's response was always the same. Just let it go. She's going through a hard time. But it felt like a constant invasion of privacy. Then things started disappearing. Small items at first. A decorative vase, a set of coasters, a couple of books. Then more valuable items began to vanish. Pieces of Carol's jewelry. And strangely, whenever these items were disappearing, Eleanor would return home from her outings with shopping bags filled with new clothes, new shoes, new accessories. Given her financial situation, she had no income. It became increasingly obvious that she was selling our possessions to fund her shopping spree. She had accumulated an entire new wardrobe filled with designer dresses and matching heels, despite having no discernible source of income. I pointed this out to Carol as gently as I could. I expressed my growing suspicion that Eleanor was stealing from us. Carol's response was to dismiss my concerns. She told me to stop focusing on her mother, that she deserved to treat herself after everything she'd been through. I didn't mind Eleanor treating herself in principle, but not with our money, not by selling our belongings. It was theft, plain and simple. The incident with my wallet was the final straw. I came home early from work one afternoon. Carol was still at her office. I went to our bedroom to take a shower, as was my usual routine. When I stepped out of the shower, I found Eleanor standing in our bedroom near my dresser. She had my wallet in her hand, and she was rifling through it. I was shocked, speechless for a moment. Then I yelled at her, demanding to know what she was doing, why she was in our bedroom, why she was going through my wallet. She turned bright red, stammering, unable to offer a coherent explanation. She looked like a child caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Later, when Carol came home, I recounted the incident. I expected her to be as outraged as I was, to finally see her mother's behavior for what it was. Instead, she minimized it. She said Eleanor probably just needed some cash, that it wasn't a big deal. She even suggested that it was okay for Eleanor to take money from my wallet if she needed it, that I should be more understanding. She accused me of looking down on her family, of judging them because they weren't as well off as I was. She said her family didn't grow up low-class and desperate like mine, implying that my upbringing somehow made me less understanding. That comment, it stung. It was a low blow, and it revealed a deep-seated resentment that I hadn't fully realized existed. I decided I needed some space. I went for a walk, a long, aimless walk, trying to make sense of Carol's reaction. I couldn't understand her unwavering loyalty to her mother, even when Eleanor was clearly in the wrong, even when she was stealing from us. When I returned home several hours later, Carol apologized. She said she'd had a firm talk with Eleanor, telling her not to enter our bedroom anymore and not to go through our belongings. I simply nodded. I didn't believe it would make any difference. Eleanor had shown repeatedly that she had no respect for boundaries, no regard for our property. And I was right. It didn't stop. I took steps to protect my belongings. I installed locks on my dresser drawers, on the cabinet in the living room, on the storage boxes in the garage. It felt ridiculous having to lock up my own possessions in my own home, but it was the only way I could feel even a semblance of security. Then came yesterday, the culmination of months of frustration, of feeling violated and disrespected. Carol called me at work, frantic. She'd gone home for lunch, as she sometimes did, to check on Eleanor. But Eleanor was gone. Not just gone for a walk or a shopping trip. Her belongings were gone too. Her clothes, her personal effects, all gone. Carol, understandably panicked, started looking around the house, trying to figure out what had happened. And that's when she made the discovery. Her credit card, which she usually kept in her wallet, was missing, and a significant portion of her jewelry, some of which were valuable heirlooms, was also gone. Eleanor wasn't answering her phone. Carol was terrified that Eleanor would use the credit card, that she would pawn the jewelry. She pleaded with me to help her. My immediate response, the only logical response in my mind, was to call the police, to report Eleanor's actions as theft. Carol reacted with anger. She said she couldn't possibly report her own mother to the police, that it was unthinkable. She accused me of being unhelpful, of not caring about her feelings. And that's where I am now, and I'm just tired, drained. I feel like I'm constantly battling against Eleanor's entitlement and Carol's enabling behavior. I suggested calling the police because that's what you do when someone steals from you. It's the logical, reasonable course of action. But Carol sees it as a betrayal. So, am I wrong for suggesting we involve the police? Isn't that the standard procedure in these cases? I genuinely don't know what else to do. Update 1. The outpouring of responses has been overwhelming, to say the least. I truly appreciate the support, and I wasn't expecting quite so many people to weigh in. Many of you have pointed out the problematic nature of Carol's behavior, and honestly, I see it too. I do. The thing is, we don't usually have problems. It's almost exclusively when Eleanor is involved. It's become increasingly clear that I need to have a serious conversation with Carol about this dynamic. As long as Eleanor remains a constant presence in our lives, this pattern of disrespecting boundaries and Carol's refusal to enforce them will inevitably continue. Update 2. I had that conversation with Carol. I even went so far as to show her this post, hoping that an outside perspective might help. It didn't go well. She's incredibly unhappy, claiming the comments are unfair and judgmental. She became extremely defensive, falling back on the argument that anyone would help their parent regardless of the circumstances. She also expressed feeling betrayed that I had shared such a private matter online. I tried to explain that my intention was simply to gauge whether suggesting the police was the appropriate course of action, but she wasn't receptive. She's squarely placing the blame on me, and I'm at a loss as to why she can't see Eleanor's role in all of this. Update 3. A week has passed, and Carol finally received communication from Eleanor. Turns out Eleanor pawned some of the stolen jewelry. She claims she desires independence, that she's weary of living with us because she feels restricted in her actions. Carol threatened to involve the police if the remaining jewelry wasn't returned, but Eleanor seems utterly unconcerned. Now Carol is pressuring me to intervene, to talk to Eleanor and try to reason with her. I firmly told Carol that I'm staying out of it. To my astonishment, Carol is now blaming me for Eleanor's departure, claiming I made her feel unwelcome. I'm honestly speechless at this point. Update 4. Some time has passed, and I've made the difficult decision to pursue a divorce. Many of you likely anticipated this outcome, and I admit I wish I had recognized the necessity sooner. After Eleanor's theft of Carol's belongings, Carol did manage to block the credit card before too much damage was done, but the recovery of the jewelry proved impossible. I reiterated my suggestion to involve law enforcement, but she steadfastly refused. And then she had the audacity to ask me to replace the stolen jewelry. Her reasoning was that since Eleanor stole it and because I supposedly made Eleanor feel unwelcome, it was somehow my responsibility to purchase new jewelry, all because she refused to call the police. I flatly refused. I told her I was finished with her family, with the entire toxic situation. A heated argument ensued during which she made some deeply hurtful remarks about my parents. I told her to leave. She was visibly shocked, accusing me of being unfair. I told her to pack her belongings, and she left, spewing curses at me, and went to stay with Eleanor. Update 5. Since Carol's departure, both she and Eleanor have been relentlessly contacting me. Carol even went so far as to contact my parents. Thankfully, my parents are nothing like hers. My mother assured Carol that she trusted my judgment, even without knowing the full details. It's been an immense relief to have their support. I haven't shared the entire story with them yet, but I plan to. I have a meeting with a lawyer today to discuss the divorce proceedings. I've already taken the advice of some of you and changed the locks. I've also ordered security cameras, which I'll be installing this week. I'm not sure if Eleanor or Carol will attempt anything, but I feel it's essential to be prepared. Update 6. 2 months have passed, and the situation has escalated to the point where Eleanor has been arrested. She had been engaging in a pattern of stalking behavior, appearing at my workplace when I was out with friends. It was incredibly stressful. On one occasion, she threw a drink at me, ruining a perfectly good shirt. I attempted to remain civil, but her behavior only worsened. She began showing up at my house, even throwing rocks at my windows. Today, she crossed a line. She broke my bedroom window. I called the police. I had no other choice. I simply couldn't endure it any longer. Carol is predictably furious. She maintains that I should have handled the matter privately, that Eleanor is going through a difficult period. I actually laughed. I told her that Eleanor deserved the consequences of her actions. Carol is now demanding that I forgive Eleanor. After everything, the stalking, the harassment, the property damage, forgiveness is not an option. I finally confided in my parents, sharing the full extent of the situation. They were shocked that I hadn't told them sooner, and they fully support my decision to proceed with the divorce. I cautioned them to be vigilant, although I don't believe Eleanor or Carol will target their home given the considerable distance. Carol ended up bailing Eleanor out of jail. I informed Carol in no uncertain terms that she was responsible for covering the cost of the window repair or I would pursue legal action. She and Eleanor eventually conceded and paid for the damages. Update 7. The divorce is finalized. It's officially over, and it feels incredibly liberating, like a weight has been lifted, and I can finally breathe freely again. My now ex-wife attempted to secure spousal support and made a play for my assets. However, the prenuptial agreement, it served its purpose. Protected me. She argued. She pleaded, but her efforts were futile. To anyone contemplating marriage, I strongly urge you to consider a prenuptial agreement. It may be an uncomfortable conversation, but it's absolutely essential. It's about foresight and preparation. And with that, this chapter of my life is closed. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My parents chose my brother to run our family business instead of me, but he ended up in jail for money laundering. About 2 months ago, my parents decided to ask their darling older son to run the business that I had been helping them build for the past couple of years. That was the point at which I decided that I was going to step away from the family business and cut all ties with my family because it was just crazy. My brother was not a good guy. I don't mean a bad person in the sense that he was mean to me at some point. I mean that he's a straight-up criminal, and it's not like my parents didn't know this. They knew. They just didn't care because, criminal or not, that's their firstborn son, and they're going to baby him forever. I'm 26, male, and my brother is 30. Right from when we were kids, he had been quite unscrupulous, and lying, cheating, and stealing were normal for him. He used to get caught quite often, so it wasn't even like he was good at it, but our parents never did anything real about it. They scolded him a little and grounded him for a few days, but they would always make things right with him. Eventually, he learned that he could get away with it if he was charming enough with our parents. It didn't work with me, though. I could see right through him, and I didn't like him. So, from the beginning itself, we have had a quite rough sibling rivalry because I used to think he was a straight-up bad person and never bothered to try and get along with him. My parents thought that I was stuck up, so they would insist that we spend time together, and both of us would hate it. Eventually, both of us left home for our respective careers, and we would only meet on the holidays. Then, a couple of months after I had graduated from high school, I heard from my parents that my brother had been fired from the company that he had been working in on charges of fraud and was being investigated. After the childhood that I had spent with him, I was not surprised at all because even in his teenage years he had become quite a teenage delinquent, and this had been coming for a really long time. For a couple of months he was on the run, but eventually, I guess he was able to get those charges squashed with the help of my parents or something, and all was well again. This was almost 3 or 4 years back, and as far as I remember, after my parents bailed him out by paying his company off with a ton of money, they decided to cut ties with him to teach him a lesson. I remember thinking that this was probably the first time that my parents had done the right thing, and I was quite happy about it. Around the same time, my dad asked me to start working under him and help him out with the family business. I had just graduated and was looking for jobs anyway, so I thought there was nothing better than working on your own family's business, and I agreed. Since then, I was the one who had been working really hard with my parents to run the business and learn the ropes so I could eventually take over. Nobody had said anything about it because my dad was still quite far away from the age of retirement, and he had no intention of giving up the reins of his business so soon. But in my head, I knew that after my dad retired, this would all be mine. I was pretty sure of it since my brother was not in the picture back then. However, he reached out to my parents about 6 months ago and said that he really wanted to apologize to them for everything, and he needed a second chance from them to prove that he was not the person that he used to be. He said that he had gone straight and had been working legitimately for the past couple of years. My brother tried really hard to sell the fact that he was now a sincere employee at a company with a good reputation, but he was sick of staying outside of the city and wanted to come back home. But if my parents didn't want that, he would stay away from our family personally. I thought they should have just told him to stay away because he was the worst, but my parents melted and decided to forgive him and bring him back. I was obviously against the idea, and I told my parents that this would backfire, but they told me that everybody deserves a second chance, and that shut me up because I couldn't say anything to that. Anyway, not getting along with my parents was not an option for me because our family business was doing pretty well, and I didn't want to stir trouble for ourselves by fighting within the family. Besides, as long as he had nothing to do with the business, I was happy because I lived away from home, so I wouldn't have to see him or interact with him often anyway. So, he came back and my parents were very happy, and from the looks of it, so was he. There was a little family reunion and they hosted a party and stuff, and he seemed to be a changed man at first. But even then, I simply couldn't bring myself to trust him. I should have trusted my gut feeling and told my parents about it, but since things were going well for them, I didn't want to be the bad guy. So, a couple of months passed and my brother and I had nothing to do with each other, but I knew that he had been living with our parents ever since he had moved back here, which I thought was slightly fishy since I knew that he had been working for the past 3 or 4 years, so he should have had some money of his own. He claimed that the only reason he had come back and had been living with his parents was because he had missed them terribly and wanted to make up for lost time. But I didn't buy it. I thought that there was something off about this entire thing, and I was right. Anyway, my parents thought I was being too skeptical and suspicious and told me to lay off of him, so I did. But 2 months back, when my dad decided to bring him to work and start teaching him things, I couldn't help but confront him about it. That was when my dad chose to tell me that he was training my brother to take over the business since my father was planning on retiring soon. Once the training was complete, he would test my brother for a couple of months and then start the paperwork. I was shocked because all this while I had been working really hard, and I had assumed that if my dad ever retired anytime soon, he would be leaving the business to me. That would be the fair thing to do. But that day, he told me that since my brother was older, he was the first in line to inherit the business. Never mind the fact that he had never worked a day on the family business like I had, nor had he taken any interest when my parents had been talking to him about training him after he had graduated. I got into a heated fight with my dad that day, and after speaking to my mom, I realized that even she was on his side. I tried to tell them how stupid it was of them to be leaving the business to a guy who had been accused of fraud previously and they themselves had to bail him out. But they told me that it didn't matter because it was their son, and everyone can make mistakes, so they were ready to forgive him. They tried to appease me by telling me that both of us could be in charge as business partners, but that has never worked with me and my brother, so I made it very clear that if he was part of the business at all, I would be stepping away because I did not want anything to do with him. It was bad enough that I had to tolerate the fact that he was a part of my family and was related to me by blood, but having him be a part of my place of work was where I drew the line. We fought and argued about it for a really long time, and eventually my parents decided to side with him. I was left feeling like a complete idiot for working so hard on the family business for the past couple of years. But I decided to cut my losses and just leave my family so I could focus on other things. It has been 2 months since then, and I have been trying to look for a job, but I'm not putting myself under any pressure because I have enough money to last for quite some time. I had been making a decent income working in the family business, but now I was just worried about the future, and I was mostly just trying to process and cope with the fact that my parents had absolutely no brain cells to function and that my brother was going to get everything that I had worked hard for. I had even been considering the idea of going after them legally because I had dedicated quite a few years of my life to the business, and they had no right to take that away from me. But then again, they haven't even asked me to quit, and after all, it was my dad's business and he was the boss, so he could do whatever he wanted since nothing had been finalized in writing so far. So, I was struggling with what to do. Turns out, I didn't actually have to do anything because karma never lets anything go unchecked for long. A few days ago, my brother ended up making it to the news just 2 months after my parents had started the process of handing over the business to him. But I'm afraid it was not for any good reason. It was because, unsurprisingly, my brother had turned out to be a criminal. I had known it all along that there was definitely something fishy about him, but my parents had refused to believe it, and now they were going to have to face the consequences. Apparently, the company that he had been employed in previously was just a front for money laundering, and he had a few other charges accompanying that against him and a couple of other people as well. Their entire group had been caught. Naturally, even though he hadn't been in touch with them for the past 2 months, the others had named him as well, and now he was in big trouble. This is what I know so far, and ever since I found out, my phone has been flooded by messages from friends and family members about it. Of course, my parents have also been trying desperately to get in touch with me. For some reason, for the past 2 months, they hadn't been speaking to me after I left the business, but now they are blowing up my phone all of a sudden. I had ignored them for a couple of days, but this morning I decided to call them back and finally speak to them because I was pretty sure that they were going to ask me to come back to them and apologize profusely for disregarding everything that I had told them about my brother. Unfortunately, my parents, being the people that they are, decided to start off on the wrong foot and started talking to me about my brother and how much trouble he was in. Apparently, the cops were investigating this at the moment, and he is being kept in custody awaiting trial because of his prior. He kept denying everything and said that he had nothing to do with the money laundering and had in fact lost a lot of money while trying to extricate himself from these people, so I had been right about him being broke, which is why he had been staying with our parents instead of getting his own place. Anyway, instead of apologizing to me, my parents started crying about how terrible all of this was, not just for my brother but also for the family, and requested that I do something to help them out here. I literally laughed in their faces because they were being so entitled and stupid, and I told them that the only people that I would be helping at this point were the cops because I had been right about everything and they had never bothered to hear me out and wanted to give their son a second chance. Well, they had done what they wanted to do and I was going to do what I wanted to do. They were quite shocked at how I was behaving and started telling me that I was being unfair and that this was my family, so I had to think about our reputation at the very least instead of just going out of my way to make things worse for my brother. They even played the business card and said that that might get investigated because he had been working closely with my parents for the past 2 months, and that would not be a good look for them. So, for the sake of the family business at least, I had to help them out. But I told them that they had already let me go because it was very obvious that they preferred my brother over me, no matter how he was as a person. Even now, they were choosing to believe his side of the story, his claims that he had not been involved, even though we all know that there is never any smoke without a fire. Plus, we also have his history, and nobody in their right mind would believe him apart from our parents. They hadn't even called me to apologize. They were calling me to ask me for help, and the sheer audacity of that is what made me go ham on them. Then they started calling me selfish and told me that I cared about nothing apart from myself and my enmity with my brother. So much so that I couldn't even see the bigger picture. The phone call ended on a very bad note. So, I am not going to be helping them get my brother out of trouble. Update 1. Hey, so I have decided to ignore my parents and do whatever I want. As it is, I really don't think that they have ever cared about me at any point in their lives. For them, my brother has always been a priority, and it was only for the past couple of years he was not in touch with them and they started treating me better. It was only because they thought that they would have nobody to pass on the business to after my dad retired, and maybe that's why they had been treating me better. Whatever the reasons were, it doesn't really matter because now that my brother is finally back, I have noticed the change in their behavior, and I remember how we used to be treated differently when we were kids. Nothing has changed, and I was a fool for believing otherwise. Even now, they have not apologized to me, and they are trying to make me feel like the bad guy for not wanting to help my brother, a known criminal. I might have even given him the benefit of the doubt if he had been a good person or if he had even bothered to be nice to me in the past couple of months ever since he had returned. But even that has not happened. After he came back, we had the same strained relationship, and we hardly even spoke to each other. So, why should I try to help somebody who has absolutely no relationship to me other than just one flimsy family bond? Just because he's related to me by blood doesn't mean I have to stand up for him, especially when I don't agree with him and whatever he does. Anyway, who are my parents to call me selfish for not standing up for him? Isn't that exactly what they had done? They refused to acknowledge all my years of hard work and decided that they were going to pass on the business to my brother just because he was older than me or whatever. The truth is, it wasn't because he was older than me. It was because he was their darling son. Even if he had been younger than me, they would have found some excuse to let him take over the business. So, all these accusations of me being selfish and stuff don't really matter to me. They can believe what they want. I'm going to do what I want because I have had enough of my family, and I'm honestly very glad that I decided to leave the business because now, since I have thought about it with a clear head, I have decided that I'm going to go ahead and build something of my own. I don't need any of them. I have the capital, and I'm sure I have the brains to come up with a decent business model. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Thank you so much to everybody in the comments who supported me. I think it was really necessary for me to get some clarity, so I stopped doubting myself. Update 2. Hi, so it has been a week and 2 days since I last spoke to my parents, and after that I blocked them so they had no way to reach out to me even if they wanted to, and I was quite happy. I had absolutely no idea what was going on with my brother, and neither am I. The cops have not approached me, but I'm sure that when this goes to trial, I might be approached to testify for or against him. When that happens, I will gladly testify against him because I think he deserves to go to jail and face the consequences this time. Our parents cannot just buy his way out because whatever he has done is pretty serious, and he has been dodging the consequences of his actions for a really long time. I would be glad for once to actually see him pay the price this time. But my parents are obviously still trying to protect him and are going out of their way to do so. Before anybody could approach me, they approached me earlier today and told me that they wanted to buy me out. So, I had been chilling at home for the last few days, and even today, I was at home when they visited. When I saw that it was my parents who were standing outside, I refused to let them in, and I told them to go away because I had nothing to say to them, and I knew that they were definitely not here to apologize, so I had no interest in speaking to them. But of course, they did not leave. They just stood there, and my dad told me that they were here to bargain with me. I was very confused, so he continued and explained that he had realized that trying to get me to be sentimental and asking me to stand up for my family was not going to work because I was not an emotional kind of person. So, the only other way he could think of was to offer me money to not testify against my brother when the time came for it. I couldn't believe he was actually trying to influence me and buy me out. I was in shock when he even said that. He then just kept making it worse by saying that he was ready to offer whatever amount I wanted. All I had to do was keep my mouth shut and refuse to testify against him at all. It would mean a great deal to the family because a brother testifying against another brother and trying to send him to jail was not a good look for anyone. He just kept going on, and after I had recovered from the initial shock, I told him that I was not accepting any sort of money from him, and I told him that he needed to go away or I would call the cops on him, and he would just end up making things worse for himself and my brother. Then my mother started screaming at me and told me that I was being selfish and that she had never expected me to act this way. She then started saying she didn't think that she and my father had raised me to act like this, pretending as if my family did not matter to me and being so egoistic and self-centered. That's when I really lost my temper, and I opened the door to face them because I really wanted to know what they thought they were talking about. As far as I remember, they had raised me to be exactly like this because I had learned all of this from them. They were the ones who had taught me that being egoistic and self-centered was fine because they didn't seem to mind those qualities in my brother. So why was it bad when I was acting that way? He had always been a terrible human being and had taken pride in it, and our parents never seemed to care about it, and even now they were doing the same thing. I then told them that they had been glad to let me go 2 months ago because they did not think that I was important enough to be retained in the company after my brother had come back. But now, just because he was in trouble, they wanted my help. Too bad, that's not how it works. Back then, they didn't remember that I was a part of their family, and this is not how you treat your family members. But now, just because it's convenient for them, they want me to act like we have been one happy family forever. I was so mad that I was actually screaming at them, and both of them looked shocked because I'm really not the kind of guy who loses my temper often. Even when I do, I don't like yelling at people because it just drains me, but I was so mad that I couldn't help it. I just kept yelling at them until my voice got hoarse, and then I told them that I wanted them to go and never come back because if they did, I would definitely call the cops and make things so much worse for them than it already was. After that, they finally seemed to realize that I was serious and left me alone. I don't know if they are going to come back or not, but if they do, I'm going to have to call the cops because I don't want to deal with this again. Today was quite emotionally draining for me, and even though I got the closure that I kind of needed, it was not worth it. I don't like getting angry, and I don't like wasting my energy. Update 3. It's happening. My brother's case is going to trial next week. Some time has passed since I last spoke to my parents, but I haven't kept in touch with them after that. Naturally. So, I hadn't been able to find out exactly what had been going on with my brother, and honestly, I did not care to find out either. All I had been focusing on for the past couple of weeks was building a business model and trying to find investors who would want to get on board. Even without investors, I think I would be able to do well because I had some savings of my own, but I did not want to use them all up. So, I have been speaking to one of my uncles and telling him about my plan since I know that he's pretty well off, and I would like to get him on board. He was the one who told me about my brother, and it was kind of surprising, but I didn't discuss it with him any further. By now, pretty much the entire family knows that I'm not on speaking terms with my parents anymore, and people have even started picking sides. My uncle, who had been discussing the business model with me and told me about my brother, is obviously on my side, and even though he is my dad's brother, he's not speaking to him anymore because of how I've been treated. I had also told him about the fact that my parents had actually tried to buy me out so that I wouldn't testify against my brother, and he had told his wife about it. She's a bit of a loudmouth, so now the entire family knows about that as well, and I have got to say, even the people who are supposedly with my parents have also been very suspicious about this whole affair because if my brother is actually innocent, then why would they try to buy me out? That's exactly the kind of thing that somebody who is guilty might try to be doing to cover up whatever they had done. Basically, the entire family has been coming up to me to talk about my parents and my brother and try to get some information out of me, but I've kept my mouth shut so far. I don't want to indulge in gossip and become a hot topic for the family. I'm only going to speak up when it's actually required by the law, and it's going to happen when I have to testify against my brother. I can't say that I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be very emotionally exhausting, but I know that I'm going to do it when the time comes. I haven't been approached yet, but if the trial is going to start soon, I'm sure that I'm going to be approached at some point, and I'm prepared for that. Update 4. Hello guys, so it has been quite a long time since my brother went to trial, and last week the verdict was announced. He's going to jail. I'm not going to say that I'm happy about it, but this was a long time coming, and I hope my parents have learned their lesson now. I have heard from a bunch of my family members that they have been very upset and have been posting about this, about how unfair his incarceration is because they still think that he's innocent, and all I have to say is that he has pretty much brainwashed them for life. Even though the court has found him guilty, my parents are not ready to believe it. To make matters worse, I know that they have been letting the company suffer because they have been too busy fighting for my brother. A lot of people have quit and they have been facing heavy losses, so I guess they might have to shut down soon. I'm quite relieved that I left because otherwise, I might have had to be a part of all that. I haven't been in touch with them ever since we had that fight when they tried to buy me out, but I did see them on the date that I was called to testify against my brother. I did testify against him like I said I would, and they were all very visibly upset about it but did not say anything to me, which was good because I wouldn't have appreciated it anyway. Now that my brother is facing the consequences of his actions and my parents are still refusing to acknowledge the fact that he's not a good person. Pretty much the entire family has cut them off, and they have nobody else to blame but themselves for the situation. They can keep asking for justice on social media, but the truth is that justice has already been served. But they can't handle that, so they are going to keep living in denial. Good for them because it hardly matters to me anymore since I have my own business to attend to. I got funding from my uncle and a couple of his friends, and of course I put in my own money as well, and 2 months ago I was able to get my business going. It's going to take a while for us to break even, but so far, it's been good. I'm also really proud of myself for being able to accomplish this because having a business of my own had always been my dream, and I'm still young. I have enough time to turn this into an empire and make my childhood ambitions come true. Fingers crossed. I hope I'll be able to achieve everything that I have set out to do. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I discovered my husband had cheated with my best friend while I was working overseas, at a baby shower they hosted for their unborn child. I returned from my work trip earlier than scheduled. I didn't tell anyone I was returning. I wanted to surprise Miguel. When I arrived on our street, I noticed a few automobiles parked in front of our house. The garden was adorned with blue and pink balloons, and a banner proclaimed, "Welcome, our little miracle." I parked my car a block away and walked over. The door was slightly open, and music and laughter could be heard from inside. When I walked in, I froze in the center of the living room. Carmen, my dearest friend, was clearly 6 months pregnant. My mother-in-law, Rosa, was softly massaging her belly as my mother poured drinks. Gifts were arranged on a beautiful table. "So, is the nursery ready?" my Aunt Elena said. "Almost," Carmen responded. Miguel insisted on painting it himself. He's been working on it every weekend. My spouse strolled in at that very moment, bearing more drinks. He approached Carmen and hugged her from behind, his hands resting on her stomach. "We just need to set up the crib," he told us. "We picked it out together last week." I watched as my mother stiffened when she saw me. She hurried over. "Anna, we weren't expecting you today," she said softly, taking my arm. "Let's go outside. We need to talk." I pushed free from her grip. "Talk about what?" I inquired. "About how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working in another country?" The buzz in the room subsided. Carmen was the first to notice me. Her face became pallid. Miguel stood motionless, his hands resting on her tummy. "Anna," he started. "Don't you dare." I interrupted him. "How long have you been cheating on me?" No one responded. My father, standing in a corner, was unable to look me in the eye. "I can explain," Carmen replied, taking a step forward. "We didn't want you to find out like this." "Oh, and how were you planning to tell me? After the baby was born, or when they turned 18? My mother-in-law stepped in. "Anna, please think about the baby. Carmen doesn't need this stress in her condition." "Her condition?" I asked, laughing dryly. "The same condition I was in 2 years ago when I lost my baby? Where was your concern then, Rosa?" The hush that ensued was deafening. My mom tried again. "Honey, I know this is difficult." "Difficult for whom?" I demanded. "For me, who worked nonstop for 9 months while my husband was sleeping with my best friend. Or for all of you who had to keep up the charade." Miguel eventually walked away from Carmen. "Anna, can we talk privately? Don't make a scene." "A scene?" I sneered. "No, Miguel. A scene would be telling everyone how you convinced me to take that overseas job, how you said we needed the money to start our family." I turned to face Carmen. "Did he tell you that? Or did he say he was lonely and abandoned while his cruel wife chased her career?" Carmen began crying. "It wasn't like that. We didn't plan this." "Of course not," I replied mockingly. "I suppose you just tripped and fell pregnant by my husband. These things happen, right?" The visitors started shifting uncomfortably. Some grabbed their bags and prepared to go. My father finally spoke up. "Anna, calm down. You're upset." "Upset?" I laughed bitterly. "No, Dad. I'm perfectly calm. In fact, I'm grateful." My mother frowned, puzzled. "Grateful?" she repeated. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "Because now I see everyone for who they really are. My husband, the liar. My best friend, the traitor. And my family, the cowards who chose to protect this lie instead of me." I strolled over to the present stand and chose one at random. "This one's yours, Mom," I said, holding it up. You bought a nice gift for your son-in-law's mistress's baby. Anna, please, my mother begged. I ripped the package paper open. The baby's attire was white with blue embellishments. How thoughtful, I replied, my voice full with sarcasm. I hope you kept the receipt. Miguel moved closer, attempting to take the gift from my hands. Enough, Anna. You're making a fool of yourself. Making a fool of myself? I snorted. No, Miguel. You did that all on your own. Getting my best friend pregnant while I was paying all the bills. My mother-in-law stood up in indignation. This is too much, she exclaimed. Miguel was just looking for the happiness you couldn't give him. Always busy, always working. You're right, Rosa, I responded coldly. I was too busy working to pay the mortgage on the house where your son was sleeping with my best friend. I gazed around the room. Every familiar face suddenly resembled that of a stranger. You know what? I said. You can keep the house, the furniture, the gifts. But Miguel, I suggest you get a good job because you won't have access to my money anymore. Miguel's cheeks turned pale. What are you talking about? I'm talking about how while I was overseas, I wasn't just working, I was also consulting a lawyer. I have proof of every penny I spent on this house, on you, on our marriage. I turned and went out of the house, not looking back. My hands were trembling. My breathing was uneven, but I refused to give up in front of them. They did not deserve to see my tears. I went away, ignoring the curious eyes of the neighbors who had most likely heard everything that had happened. I got in my car and slammed the door shut. My fingers grew white from the tight hold I had on the steering wheel. My vision had dimmed, but I refused to cry. I started the engine and drove away from that nightmare with no destination or direction. My phone was full of messages. I missed calls from my mother. Miguel sent text messages, even Carmen. Please, Anna, we need to talk. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. You don't understand the whole situation. Oh, I understood. I really understood. I realized that while I was working to support my home, family, and marriage, they were all together. Every time Miguel called and said he missed me, I knew he was telling a lie. I realized that whenever Carmen stated she was busy and couldn't talk, it was because she was busy with him. A nasty taste entered my mouth. Disgust. I'm disgusted with myself for not noticing it sooner. After driving for a time, I turned into the parking lot of an unrelated hotel. I needed someplace to breathe. I wasn't returning to that house. That house now served as a monument to my humiliation. I headed to the front desk and reserved a room for a few days. The receptionist gave me an odd look, possibly due to my untidy appearance, but handed me the key without asking any questions. When I entered the room, I shut the door and collapsed on the bed. Only then did the weight of everything overwhelm me. I curled up and hugged myself, letting the tears flow. Tears of fury, disdain, and a deep, stifling agony that constricted my chest. But I couldn't do this forever. I needed to do something. The next morning, I went directly to my lawyer's office. He was already aware of my condition and had all of the essential documentation prepared to guarantee that I get out of this problem with as little damage as possible. I want to start the process today, I stated firmly. Divorce, property division, everything. And I want it to be clear that Miguel won't see a single cent of my money. He nodded. You have more than enough evidence to contest any claim he might make. The house is in your name. All the expenses were covered by you. He has no rights to anything. I took a deep breath. Good. Then let him find out the hard way. I walked out of the office with an unusual sensation of relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt in charge of my own life. My phone vibrated. Miguel. I ignored it. Minutes later, a message appeared. We need to talk. Please, Anna. I merely said, talk to my lawyer. Days passed, and the calls and messages continued. Until one afternoon, while I was drinking coffee at a cafe near the hotel, someone approached my table. Miguel. He looked terrible. Deep eye bags, unkempt hair. But I had no pity. Anna, please. He sat across from me without being asked. I didn't want you to find out like that. I crossed my arms. Oh, But how did you want me to find out? With an invitation to the baby shower. He ran his palm over his face. Tired. This isn't how I wanted things to happen. I made a mistake. A mistake. I scoffed. Getting my best friend pregnant was not a mistake, Miguel. It was a choice. You decided to sleep with her. You decided to lie to me. You opted to have everyone cover for you. He lowered his head. I was lonely, Anna. You were never here. You were always traveling, always busy with work. I gave out a sour laugh. And why was I busy, Miguel? Because I was the one paying for our damn house while you sat at home doing nothing. He said nothing. You want to know the most ironic part? I asked. I took that position because I believed we were creating something together, and I made sacrifices thinking it was for the greater good. But while I was straining myself to exhaustion, you were ripping off my dearest friend. He gazed at me with desperation. I know I messed up, Anna, but can't we fix this another way? I leaned forward and looked right into his eyes. We're correcting it. My lawyer has already filed for divorce. You will not receive a penny from me. And as for that child, I hope you are a decent father, because I want you out of my life. Anna, please. It's over, Miguel. I stood up and went away, not looking back. The news quickly spread. My true friends, those who had not deceived me, stood by my side. And my family? Oh, they attempted to contact me. My mother contacted me several times and tried to justify everything. We didn't want to hurt you, sweetheart. It was complicated for all of us. You need to forgive. Forgive? No. I moved on. I eventually rebuilt my life. I left the motel and got a new apartment. I concentrated on my profession and future. And Miguel? He quickly learned that life was not as easy without the comfort I had supplied. A few weeks later, I got another note. Can we talk? I miss you. I smiled and deleted the message without responding. And for the first time in a long time, I felt liberated. When I finally received word that Miguel had been legally served with the divorce papers, I knew his real misery had only begun. He attempted to reach me in every manner possible. He called me dozens of times each day. He sent an unending number of messages. He even showed up at places I frequented. But I did not respond. I did not give him a chance. I refused to allow him to control me. One night, when I was returning to my apartment, I noticed my mother standing outside. Anna, we need to talk. I rolled my eyes. I already knew what it was about. We have nothing to talk about. Miguel is desperate. You're taking everything from him, she exclaimed, as if I were the antagonist in this scenario. I crossed my arms. Oh, now he's the victim. Honey, he made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you should ruin his life, my mom replied. I laughed without humor. He ruined my life, Mom. He cheated on me, got my best friend pregnant, and all of you covered for them. And now you have the nerve to tell me that I'm being cruel. She groaned and reached for my hand, but I pulled away. What you're doing to him, this isn't right, Anna. Anger flared in my chest. Oh, you want to talk about what's right? I snapped. Was it right for me to pay the mortgage alone while he was screwing my best friend? Was it right that I worked my ass off while he played the perfect husband? Now he gets to deal with the consequences. She looked at me as though I were a monster. He has nowhere to go, she muttered. I shrugged. Not my problem. She shook her head, disbelieving. I didn't raise you to be this way, Anna. And I didn't expect my own mother to take the side of a cheating bastard. I turned around and walked into my building, not looking back. Days passed, and Miguel's plight only worsened. Since I had paid for everything, he was now drowning in bills. The mortgage payments were past due, and without my money, he swiftly fell into financial despair. Then came the eviction. I knew it was coming when I got confirmation that he hadn't made any payments, and I made it a point to personally see the moment he was forced to leave my house. When I arrived, the place was in disarray. Boxes were spread over the front yard. Miguel was disputing with the eviction officer. Carmen stood behind him, gripping her pregnant tummy with a terrified gaze. Anna, he said when he spotted me, you can't do this to me. I crossed my arms, feeling a dark sensation of contentment grow within me. I can, and I did. This isn't fair. I lived in this house. No, I replied coldly. I paid for this house. You were just a parasite living in it. His face flushed red with frustration. Where the hell do you expect me to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. Carmen gazed at me with desperation in her eyes. Anna, please, please. She had the audacity to look me in the eyes and say, please. I took a step towards her. Oh, so now you can say my name. Before it was just, I hope she never finds out. Wasn't it? She lowered her head. It wasn't supposed to be like this. But it is. And now you and Miguel have to deal with it. Miguel rubbed his hands across his face, appearing weary. You don't have a heart, he mumbled. I tilted my head. Funny. Because you sure loved that heart when it was paying all your bills. He opened his mouth to argue, but then closed it again when the officer approached. Time's up. You need to vacate the property now. Miguel's expression changed to one of utter terror. He looked around and realized he was out of options. He grabbed a box and banged it on the ground. You just want to see me destroyed, don't you? I leaned in closer, meeting his stare without pity. Yes. He clenched his jaw and marched out, Carmen trailing behind him. I stood there, watching him leave, broken, homeless, and powerless. Over the next few days, my entire family turned against me. My aunts called me. My mother arrived at my apartment again. Even my father, who normally remained out of things, attempted to intercede. Anna, he's sleeping on your mother-in-law's couch. Don't you think this has gone too far? No, Dad, I don't. Carmen is pregnant. They have nothing. Great, I remarked, my voice full of sarcasm. Then Miguel can finally do what he should have done a long time ago. Get a job. My mother threw up her hands, exasperated. You're obsessed with revenge. And you're obsessed with protecting a cheater. They couldn't change my mind. And Miguel? Oh, Miguel was in ruins. There was no home, no comfort. He no longer had access to the money he had been stealing from me for years. I heard from some mutual friends that he had started working odd jobs to make ends meet, but it wasn't enough. And then the unavoidable occurred. Miguel walked up to my apartment. He appeared unhappy, thinner, with black circles beneath his eyes. Anna, please. I have nothing left, he said. I stared at him. I know. I need help. I inclined my head and pretended to think. Like I needed help when I found out you were cheating on me? He closed his eyes, annoyed. I was an idiot. I know that, but I can't change the past. I crossed my arms. No, but you sure as hell can suffer in the present. His palms tightened into fists as he swallowed his pride. You don't have to be this cruel. Oh, but I do, I replied, my tone mocking. I learned from the best. With that, I slammed the door in his face. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. Miguel was now discovering what life was like without me. And me? I was finally free. Miguel sunk deeper, exactly as I predicted. There was no home, no money, no comfort. He had transformed from a privileged, dependent husband to a desperate man who hopped from job to job simply to stay afloat. And me? I moved on. I did not feel sorry for him. In fact, every time I heard of another calamity in his life, I felt a strange kind of joy. It was a great taste of justice to know that all he had done to me would come back to haunt him. And then I got the finest news I'd had in months. Carmen has filed for divorce. I discovered it from an acquaintance, one of the few people who still dared to speak with me after everything had transpired. She ran into me in a cafe, paused for a bit, and smiled slightly before dropping the bombshell. She left him. I blinked. What? Carmen? She filed for divorce, and she wants alimony. I couldn't stop myself from laughing, and it was a big, true laugh from the core. Are you serious? I said, still chuckling. Dead serious. Miguel can't hold a stable job, and she doesn't want to be the one supporting him. Oh, the irony was great. Carmen had sworn Miguel was her genuine love. I worked hard to support him, but he clung to me like a parasite. She had now done the same thing to him as he had to me. She left him when he was no longer useful. And she wants alimony? I inquired, still beaming. Yeah. She claims he promised to take care of her. And now that she has a baby, she needs financial support. I couldn't stop laughing. Please tell me, I responded, chuckling. Does Miguel even have money to pay her? My acquaintance smirked. No, I lost it. Miguel hadn't simply lost everything I'd given him. Now even the lady he betrayed me for was financially ruining him. Karma had come for him, and this time, he had no one left to leech from. I had to see it. The following week, I made an unintentional appearance at a location I knew Miguel still frequented. A dingy bar where we used to hang out, one of the few places he could still afford. He was sitting at the counter, resembling a ghost of his old self. Thinner, dark rings appeared under his eyes. His beard was untidy. Of course, he was holding a cheap beer. I strolled in gently and took my time, then sat 2 seats away. He quickly noticed me. His expression hardened. What do you want? He asked quietly, his voice raspy and exhausted. Nothing, I replied, picking up my own drink. Just enjoying the view. He breathed deeply. Are you happy now? I sipped, enjoying the moment. Yes, very. He scoffed and shook his head. You think this is funny? Miguel, I find this hilarious. You abandoned our marriage for Carmen, and look where you are today. She left you and took what little you had left. He ran a hand over his face, obviously fatigued. You don't understand. Oh, I understand completely. Tell me, how your great love fell apart so swiftly. He remained silent for a long time before glancing at his empty glass. She said she couldn't be with someone who had nothing to offer. I grinned. Funny, right? That's exactly what you said about me. He closed his eyes, his jaw stiffening. You don't get it, Anna. Oh, I do. You were only suitable for her when it was convenient. Now that you can't provide the comfortable life she desired, she threw you away like junk. He did not argue because he could not. I rose up, prepared to depart. You know what's the best part? I asked, staring down at him. You deserve every bit of this. And I walked away, leaving Miguel to drown in his own despair. Following that day, I cut off all ties to my past. I alienated myself from my family. The hypocritical aunts who often told me to forgive, my mother who insisted that I had gone too far. I owed nothing to any of them. I only owed myself. So I started afresh. I completely reconstructed my life. I bought a new apartment exclusively for myself. I sold everything that reminded me of that miserable period in my life. I donated some items, others were burned. Miguel and Carmen were eliminated. I went out more. I met new folks. I enjoyed life without carrying dead weight on my back. For the first time in years, I had control over my life. And as I moved forward, Miguel kept falling apart. Months later, I learned that he had attempted to appeal the divorce decision, arguing that he deserved alimony instead. Of course, the judge laughed at him and refused everything. I also discovered that Carmen continued to drain what little money he had left. And me? I have never felt better. The world was finally as it should be. I was free, and Miguel was receiving just what he deserved. Now on to the next story. Story 5. After my parents refused to help babysit and compared my children to my sister's kids, I stopped helping them with free house repairs. The following day, my phone burst. Thanksgiving was intended to be a time for family, excellent food, and a reprieve from reality, but it turned out to be a disaster. We were all gathered at my parents' new property, which I had spent the previous 2 months renovating for them. They had asked me to do it, so I accepted. New floors, plumbing repairs, repainting, and electrical work. I spent every free hour there, covered in dust and sweat, ensuring that everything was flawless. Meanwhile, they sat peacefully in their flat, waiting for the house to be completed. I did not complain. They were my parents, and helping them was the right thing to do. In exchange, I had requested only one thing: occasional babysitting. Not every day, not every weekend, only when I needed it. My wife died a few years ago, and I was doing my best to raise my children alone, but sometimes I needed assistance. I believed it made sense, and they had always agreed. Until that night. We were in the middle of supper when my father laid down his fork and said, "We're not going to babysit your kids anymore." I assumed he was kidding, but his expression was serious. The table became quiet. Then he went on to imply that they were exhausted, that my children were too much, and worst of all, compared them to my sister's children. He mentioned how well-behaved, quiet, and easy they were, unlike mine. I looked over to my sister. She didn't say anything, just sat there smiling. Something inside of me twisted. I'd spent 2 months fixing up her house for free. They had never had to lift a finger, and now they were telling me that my children, were a burden to them, that they weren't as good as my sisters. I took a big breath and tried to hold it together. Then I said, "Really? I'll stop fixing your house." There was silence. My father just looked at me like I had hit him. My mother stepped in and tried to smooth things over. She started talking about how I didn't realize how difficult it was for them and how much they had done for me. She made it appear as if I was pushing them to do unpaid work, while in reality, I had barely asked for anything. Before I could react, several of our other relatives spoke up. They did not like it. One of my aunts remarked it was foolish to talk about my children in that manner, especially in front of them. Another uncle pointed out how much I had already done for my parents, thereby saving them thousands of dollars on repairs. My sister remained mute, soaking all the accolades for her wonderful children. I stood up. "Thank you for a great Thanksgiving dinner," I told them. "I'm extremely grateful for everything." I then turned to my children and informed them that we were going. We collected our coats and hurried to the car, leaving a table filled with startled expressions. That night, my children questioned me why their grandparents had said those things and why they were constantly comparing them to their cousins. I moaned and stroked my cheek. The world isn't always fair, and sometimes grandparents aren't the nicest people. They gazed at me, expecting more, so I made sure to express what was most important. "But I love you both more than anything." I went to bed weary. I had no regrets, but it hurt nonetheless. The next morning, I had 52 missed calls from my parents. When I saw 52 missed calls, I assumed something horrible had happened. My stomach dropped. I instantly called my mother back, half expecting to hear about an emergency. Instead, as soon as she answered the phone, she began ranting as if I had personally set fire to her home. "John, you need to come over right now," she urged. I frowned. "Why? What happened?" She skirted the question and insisted that I come over. My father also got on the phone, his tone tense but controlled. "Just come, John. We need to talk." I was not foolish. I knew exactly what this was about, but I knew I had to leave nonetheless. My children still had some belongings in their house, and I did not want to leave them behind. So I informed them that I'd be there in an hour. When I got inside their flat, I knew things hadn't calmed down overnight. My mother was pacing. My father was standing in the kitchen with his arms crossed. And my sister, who had seemingly decided to become even more involved, was seated on the couch as if she were moderating a presidential discussion. It began immediately as I closed the door behind me. My mother leaped in first. "John, don't you think you overreacted?" I stared at her. "Overreacted?" My father jumped in. "We're sorry if we hurt your feelings, but you can't just refuse to finish the house because of this." I nearly laughed. There it was. That was what this was all about. Not the family or the children, but the house. I shook my head. "So let me get this straight. You call my kids a burden, say they're too much for you, compare them to my sister's kids in front of everyone, and now when I say I won't do the work you asked me to do for free, I'm the problem?" My mother placed her palm on her chest as if I had just badly offended her. "That's not fair, John. We have done a lot for you. We took care of your kids for years." My sister finally spoke up. "Mom, Dad, you really shouldn't compare the kids like that." For the first time, my parents seemed astonished. My mother blinked at her. "You don't think we were right?" My sister shrugged. "It's not about being right. You just shouldn't have said it in front of the kids. It's not okay." I must admit, I didn't expect her to say that. She wasn't exactly defending me, but she wasn't supporting them either. Instead of backing down, my father turned back to me. "John, we just want this to be over. You're not going to cut us off over something so small. I looked him dead in the eyes. Watch me. My mother gasped as if I had threatened to place her in a nursing home. My father began to say something else, but I was done. I went to the closet, got my children's clothes, and proceeded out the door. And that was when my mother said it. John, you're being selfish. I paused. Selfish? After 2 months of free labor? After bending over backwards to help them? After never complaining about all the times they needed something from me? I turned around. Selfish? You want me to work on your house, but you won't even look after your own grandchildren? You want my time, my effort, my energy, but the second I need something, it's suddenly too much for you. My mother opened her mouth to respond, but I was finished. You don't have to babysit anymore, but I don't have to fix your house either. Then I walked out. That was only the beginning. Things worsened during the next few weeks. First, they attempted to force me to return. Then they attempted to guilt me. Then they begged because they had a serious situation. Hiring professionals would cost a fortune, and the longer I ignored them, the more desperate they became. But just when I thought they couldn't get any more manipulative, something happened that changed everything. For the first few days following the incident, I ignored their calls. I ignored their text messages as well. Then began the guilt trip. First, my mother gave the typical "we're getting old, John. We won't be around forever" spiel. Then my father wrote me a long note about family loyalty and how I was being unreasonable over a minor misunderstanding. Meanwhile, my sister remained relatively silent. I assumed she was trying to stay out of it, but at least she spoke up briefly during the debate. Then, about a week after Thanksgiving, I received a message from my father that made me laugh. John, we forgive you. Can you come finish the house this weekend? Forgive me? I did not even respond. That's when they changed their strategy. At first, they tried to bribe me. My mother called to say they'd start babysitting again if I finished the house. I told her no. My father then texted me that they'd be willing to help with the kids if I came over to talk things out. I told him no. Then they sent my sister to try. She called one night and began with light conversation, inquiring about my children. Then she spoke casually. Maybe you should just finish the house. They're being stubborn, but it's probably easier if you just get it done. I laughed. So I do free labor, and in return they insult my kids, and you think I'm the one who should back down? She paused. I mean, it's their house, John. They're just stuck in their ways, you know how they are. I do. That's why I'm not doing it. She exhaled. Look, I get it. Okay? But they're never going to admit they were wrong. That struck me. She knew they were mistaken. She wasn't even attempting to dispute it, but she knew they'd never say it aloud. I told her I had to leave and hung up. That night, I considered everything. About how for years I had done things for them without expecting anything in return. About how they had never showed me genuine appreciation. They acted as if it was my responsibility to help them, but an inconvenience to help me. And I determined I was finished. Completely. That was the night I blocked their numbers. 2 days later, my sister arrived at my place unexpectedly. I opened the door and noticed her standing there, looking embarrassed. We need to talk, she said. I allowed her inside. She sat down at my kitchen table and stared at me for a moment. Then she sighed. They called the contractor, she explained. It astonished me. Good. So they finally got someone to do it. She grimaced. Yeah, but there's a problem. I waited. They got scammed. I blinked. She nodded. Dad hired some guy off Facebook because he was cheaper than a real company, paid him up front, and now he's gone. Took the money and disappeared. Couldn't help it. I laughed. My sister shot me a glance. John, they lost $10,000. I stopped laughing. 10 grand? Wait, where did they even get that much money? They borrowed some of it, she told me. From family. That part took me off guard. Who? I asked. She hesitated before saying, Uncle Mark, Aunt Linda, even Grandma. I sat back. They borrowed from other individuals to avoid acknowledging they needed me, and now they were $10,000 in debt with a half-finished house. I shook my head. That's not my problem. My sister nodded slowly. I know. And I told them that. That made me pause. You what? She exhaled. I told them they should have just apologized to you, that they did this to themselves. For the first time in this disaster, I felt a shift. My sister, their favorite and golden kid, had actually spoken up for me. She leaned forwards. John, they're desperate. They want you to come back. They're still being stubborn, but they know they messed up. I crossed my arms. She shrugged. And I think you should make them beg. Hearing my sister say that threw me off. She had always been their favorite, the one they admired and supported, and now she told me to make them beg. I raised an eyebrow. You really think they'll do that? She flashed me a half smile. They don't have a choice. For the first time in my life, I felt control. I slumped back in my chair. So what exactly do they want from me? She exhaled. They want you to come over and talk. I laughed. Yeah, I've heard that before. She nodded. I know, but this time they're not in control. You are. And she was correct. I did not go that day. I did not go the following day either. I let them sit in their messes, allowed them to sweat. A few days later, my mother broke. She wrote a rambling text that was part apology and part excuse. She admitted that they may have been unjust and should not have said what they did. But what is the funniest part? We should have handled things differently, but you also overreacted. I genuinely laughed when reading it. Even when they were desperate, they had to assign some blame. I ignored the message. Then my father tried. His response was simpler. John, we need you. Come back and finish the house. We'll figure everything else out later. No apologies. Just, we need you. I also overlooked that. The next night, my sister called. Okay, she said. I think they're actually breaking this time. What happened? They told me to tell you they're sorry. I blinked. Wait, they actually said that? She paused. Well, they told me to tell you. Not in those exact words, but I exhaled. Close enough. She then said something that astonished me. They asked if I thought you'd ever speak to them again. That made me pause. For the first time, I realized they were truly terrified. They were concerned not only about the house, but also that they had pushed me too far. Honestly, they had. I agreed to meet with them, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to hear from them. I told my sister I'd come over on my own terms. When I walked into their apartment, they seemed less confident and more apprehensive. My mother had been crying. My father looked fatigued. I sat, crossed my arms, and waited. Finally, my father sighed. We messed up, John. That was as close to an apology as I was going to receive. He went on to say how they didn't plan to hurt me but were frustrated, exhausted, and stressed, that the home had gotten overbearing, and that they had spoken inappropriately. Then my mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. We love you and the kids. And for the first time, I believed her. I waited for them to be silent for a bit before saying, I'm not finishing your house. My mother gasped like I'd slapped her. My father tensed. John, he answered. I cut him off. You had 2 months of free labor from me. You had help whenever you needed it, and the one thing I asked for in return was too much for you. Now I'm done. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not fixing your house. Silence. My mother seemed to want a quarrel, but she didn't. My father stared at the table. My sister was just watching. Then I stood up. But I'm willing to move forward if you stop treating me like I owe you something, if you stop treating my kids like they're less than my sisters, and if you understand that from now on, if I help you, it's because I want to, not because you expect it. They nodded because they had no other option. I left that day feeling I'd won, and for the first time in a long while, I felt liberated. Things did not suddenly improve following the meeting. My parents were not suddenly better people, and I wasn't foolish enough to believe they wouldn't try to push the boundaries again. But something had changed. They realized I wasn't going to be their handyman, backup plan, or safety net. They were afraid because they knew I was about to walk away. For a few weeks, there were no needless phone calls or guilt trips, only silence. It was nearly calm. Then, one afternoon, I received a text from my mother. Can we take the kids this weekend? We missed them. I stared at the text for a moment. This was the same woman who had referred to them as a burden and had made comparisons to my sister's children in their presence. Has she suddenly missed them? I tried to dismiss it, but I remembered my children. So I asked her, "Do you want to go?" They paused. My youngest, Ben, appeared hesitant. My oldest, Emily, crossed her arms. Are they going to be weird again? I was honest. Maybe. They thought about it. Then Emily shrugged. I guess we can go. So I quickly said, sure. I'll drop her off at 5. My parents were not the same that weekend. When I dropped her off, my mother seemed extremely kind, as if she was trying too hard to show she wasn't the bad guy. My father was silent. I stayed for a few minutes, just enough to ensure my children's comfort. Then before I left, my father pulled me aside. We really love them, John, he remarked. We just messed up. It wasn't a full apology, but for my father, it was as close as I could get. I just nodded. Good. Then don't mess up again. Later that night, I received a call from my sister. I have to tell you something, she said. Her voice conveyed seriousness. What is it? She exhaled. Mom told me something the other day about why she stopped babysitting. I sat upright. Because they were tired, right? She paused. No, that wasn't it. At least not the whole reason. I frowned. What was it? She took a deep breath. They were jealous, John. I blinked. Jealous of what? She paused. Of you. Of how much the family stood by you at Thanksgiving. Of how close you are with your children. About how you became the center of attention when they're used to it being me. That really threw me. That doesn't even make sense. It does to them, she explained. They felt like you lost control, like people were looking at you as the good son, the responsible one, and that pissed them off. I sat there trying to digest everything. My parents were more than just tired of babysitting. They were bitter. Bitter because I was a nice father. It was wild. It was sad. And that just reinforced one thing for me. They would never really change. I did not inform my parents what my sister said. It wouldn't have altered anything. But I did modify how I handled them from that point forward. Everything was on my terms. When they wanted to see the children, only if my kids wanted to. If they needed my assistance with something, they had to ask, not assume. If they ever disrespected my children again, that was it. No more chances. And the best part? They knew. For the first time in my life, I was not simply their son. I was someone they needed to respect. And that was worth everything. For a while, everything remained polite. My folks were on their best behavior. They didn't push, guilt me, or ask me for help around the house anymore. It was almost as if they had finally understood. Until they hadn't. My aunt contacted me one Sunday afternoon and asked, John, did you see what your mom posted on Facebook? It was never a pleasant sentence to hear. When I opened the app, there was a lengthy, dramatic post from my mother about how family members should always help one another, and how some people forget where they came from after everything we've done. She concluded, it's heartbreaking to see our own son turn his back on us. She did not mention my name, but everyone understood who she was talking about. And the best part? She concluded, at least we still have our amazing daughter who never left us. That was it. That was it. I was done. I didn't text or phone her. I wrote a simple response to the post. You're right, Mom. Family should help each other. That's why I spent 2 months fixing your house for free while you sat in your apartment. That's why I asked for nothing in return except that you treat my kids with basic respect. And when you called them a burden and compared them to my sister's children, I realized that you don't want a family. You want servants. And I'm not playing that role anymore. I pressed submit and saw the torrent open. The first comment came from my uncle. Wow, I didn't know the whole story. This is messed up. Then my aunt. John is right. You took advantage of him. He gave you everything and you repaid him by insulting his children. Unbelievable. Then my grandmother, the one from whom they borrowed money. You told me you needed the money because John refused to help you, but you never told me why. Now I see the truth. Comment after comment sided with me. And the best one came from my sister. I love Mom and Dad, but John is telling the truth. They treated him unfairly, and he has every right to leave. My golden sister, the one they always favored and supported, didn't defend them. I sat back and watched my parents' reputations crumble in real time. About an hour later, the post was deleted. My mother tried to call, but I didn't answer. She then texted, "Was that necessary?" I responded, "Was your mail necessary?" There was nothing. A few days later, my father caved in. He simply wrote, "We were wrong. We're sorry. No excuses. No blame." And frankly, I didn't need anything else. I never worked on their home again. They had to hire someone at full price. I would never let them shame me into anything again. If they wanted to see my kids, it was because they wanted to, not because they forced it. And what's the biggest change? They never compared my children to my sister's children again, because they knew if they did, it would be their final time seeing them. I had placed them in their place, and for the first time they realized it. I'd won. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My mother-in-law and sister called me a freeloader while I secretly paid their bills. They threw me and my son out. They'll regret it. My life was rather straightforward until Jake came around. I worked as a fitness trainer at a neighborhood gym where I helped others get into shape. It kept me busy enough not to think about the absence of drama in my personal life. Everything changed the day Jake stepped into my gym. "Hey, I'm looking to switch up my routine. Got any killer moves to start with?" he inquired, his tone light but his stare serious. I gave him a once-over. He wasn't your typical rookie, unsure which machine to try first. No, he appeared to know his way around a gym but was looking for something more. "Sure," I said, directing him to a set of weights. "Let's see what you've got." The initial session turned into a week, then a month. Our casual conversations became longer and more personal. Jake owned a modest family restaurant known for its authentic Italian cuisine. "It's all about the sauce," he'd explain. "And nobody makes it like my mom." He spoke about his mother with admiration and frustration, hinting at strong family ties. He surprised me one afternoon as we finished a particularly strenuous workout. "Listen, Emily, I've been thinking, how about dinner at my place? You can meet my mom and try that sauce I keep bragging about." I paused, more out of surprise than disinterest. "Yeah, why not? I'm curious if it's as good as you claim." Dinner was cozy, the food was fantastic, and the company was surprisingly comfortable. His mother, Anna, smiled warmly and laughed heartily, but her eyes seemed to size me up with each glance. Sophia, his younger sister, also stopped by. Her presence was more prickly, her remarks crisp and rapid. "So, Emily," Sophia began, a sneer flashing on her lips as she examined the muscles I had worked so hard to develop. "Jake tells us you're quite the fitness guru. Ever deal with hopeless cases? Or do you just make the fit fitter?" I chuckled and took her jab in stride. "I believe everyone has potential. It's all about finding the right motivation." Jake became a continuous presence in my life. He consistently arrived at the gym at the same time and always found an excuse to talk a bit longer. "You know, I never believed in fate or any of that stuff," he admitted one evening as we closed the gym together. "But meeting you, maybe I was wrong." His statements were a combination of gruff charm and clumsy earnestness. It was refreshing. Despite the niggling voice in my head telling me to take it slowly, I found myself falling for him, hard and quick, like a rookie carrying too much weight without a spotter. One frigid evening as we went to our cars, he came to a halt and turned to face me, his demeanor solemn. "Emily, I'm not good at this fancy talking, and I don't have a smooth line to throw your way, but I like you a lot. What do you say we make this official?" It was abrupt and honest. No games. There would be no delaying the inevitable. That was Jake, straightforward and all in. I grinned as my heart pounded in my chest. "I say yes. Let's see where this goes." And with that, I was no longer merely a fitness trainer at the neighborhood gym. I was Jake's girlfriend and eventually his wife. Moving into Jake's mother's house shortly after we married was not exactly what I had envisioned for our happily ever after. Jake explained that it was essential to him because of his familial links, but living with his mother, Anna, and sister, Sophia, was difficult from the beginning. They did not hide their unhappiness with my entering the family, and things became more tense by the day. The house was usually busy, yet I somehow ended up with more than my fair share of responsibilities. After a long day at the gym, I'd go home to an endless list of responsibilities. The old washing machine was a nightmare. It broke down so frequently that I half joked it was personal against me. Nobody else seemed to notice or care, particularly Anna and Sophia. I recall one evening, after dinner, I was attempting to fix that dreaded machine when I overheard them conversing in the kitchen. "She doesn't even know what she's doing," Sophia said, laughing without lowering her voice. "Watch. She'll flood the basement next." Their laughter rang down the corridor, wounding more than I cared to confess. I bit my tongue and concentrated on the task at hand. It was not just the washing machine, it was everything from cooking to cleaning. My efforts were simply another source of fun for them. Cooking was the worst. Italian cooking was revered in this household, and my attempts were deemed blasphemous. I tried to follow Anna's recipes exactly, but nothing seemed to work. Sophia lurked in the doorway one night while I was struggling with a seemingly simple spaghetti recipe. "Is that supposed to look like that?" she inquired, a sneer crossing her lips. "It's nothing like Mom's." I gritted my teeth and stirred the sauce, which wouldn't thicken. "Well, I'm trying my best here." Sophia snorted. "Maybe your best isn't good enough. Did you ever think of that?" I wanted to respond, to defend myself, but what was the point? Everything would remain the same. Jake appeared to shrink slightly whenever his sister or mother chastised me. He never stood up for me. His quiet was as audible as their laughter. "Hey, Emily, just leave it," Jake said quietly later, attempting to avoid confrontation. "It's not worth it." Dinner time was a hassle. I had arranged the dishes on the table in the hopes of having a tranquil supper, but it seemed like I was sitting in a lion's den. "You know, in Italy, they'd probably ban you from the kitchen for this," Anna joked as she tried my food, and the others laughed along. "Yeah, maybe stick to what you know, gym stuff," Sophia would say, distributing the salt as if it were a peace gift I did not deserve. I'd nod, grin, and swallow the hurt, my irritation simmering like the sauce that never worked out. Living with Jake's family made each day feel like a war I was unprepared for. As my pregnancy progressed, the housework, which already felt like it was all on me, became increasingly stressful. Instead of receiving assistance or sympathy from Anna and Sophia, I sensed their hostility grow worse. One afternoon, I attempted to sweep the living room while moving slower than normal due to my increasing tummy. Anna strolled in, regarded me for a bit, and then gave out a sigh of displeasure. "Emily, you missed a spot over there, and look at how slow you're moving. This house is going to fall apart at this rate," she observed, pointing to a corner I hadn't yet arrived at. I straightened up, feeling a tightness in my back. "I'm doing the best I can, Anna. It's a bit harder with the baby," she scoffed, shaking her head. "In my time, we didn't let a little thing like pregnancy slow us down. You need to toughen up." The lack of sympathy hurt, and I bit my tongue to avoid snapping back. Sophia fared no better. Later that day, as I was folding laundry, she entered the room and began flipping through the clothing I had just carefully put. "You do know these aren't folded right, don't you? They should be able to stand up on their own like how Mom taught us. Here, let me show you again." She tossed the shirt she was holding back into the pile, undoing what I had previously done. Then, with precise movements, she refolded the same garment. I felt my frustration increase. "Sophia, I appreciate the lesson, but I've folded clothes before. I'm not an idiot." She only raised her brow, a cold smile flashing on her lips. "Could have fooled me. But hey, if you're okay with being mediocre, who am I to argue?" Her words felt like a slap. For a time, I just stood there, watching her make my efforts appear futile. It was the same with cooking. Every dish I tried was met with criticism or downright ridicule, especially if I tried to create something Italian. One evening, I decided to try again, this time with a basic pasta dish that I believed I had nailed. Sophia arrived into the kitchen just as I was stirring the soup. "What's that supposed to be?" she inquired, staring into the pot with a doubtful expression. "It's spaghetti carbonara. I thought it might be nice for dinner," I added, hoping for a difference in her typical gruff tone. She took a fork, tossed some pasta on it, and tasted it with an exaggerated distaste. Nice? This is what you call nice? I wouldn't feed this to the dog. It's all wrong. I banged the pot's lid down slightly harder than necessary. Well, it's what's for dinner. If you don't like it, you're welcome to make something else. Every day, the tension in the house increased, and Jake's absence exacerbated the situation. He was usually at the restaurant, always busy. When he was at home, he avoided all conflicts. When I tried to tell him about how his sister and mother treated me, he would just sigh and say something like, "I know it's tough, Emily, but try to hang in there. They'll warm up to you eventually. Just give it time." After giving birth to my kid, I hoped things would improve, but the truth was quite the contrary. I had gained a significant amount of weight during my pregnancy, which became their new source of mocking. "Look at how much she's eating." Anna would chuckle as I tried to fuel myself for breastfeeding. "Are you feeding a child or a small army?" One day, as I was feeding my kid in the living room, I heard Sophia imitate a cow mooing from the kitchen. The sound cut through me. Tears stung my eyes. It was obvious that they considered me as nothing more than a cow, a utility for my son. I reached a breaking point. The relentless ridiculing and frigid treatment at home became unbearable. I needed a place for myself, where I wasn't just the scolded daughter-in-law or the underappreciated wife. That is when I decided to create my own YouTube channel and Instagram page. One morning, while Jake was at the restaurant and Sophia was out shopping, I put up my old camera in the corner of our tight guest room as my new impromptu gym. "I'm doing this," I whispered to myself while adjusting the angle. "For me, not for them." I began filming easy training videos that could be done at home, particularly appealing to moms like myself who couldn't always get to the gym. Talking to a camera felt strange at first, as if I were addressing an audience who was interested in what I had to say. However, it soon became my haven. The first several videos were amateurish with stiff commentary. "Hey everyone, it's Emily here, bringing you a quick 10-minute workout, perfect for busy moms. Let's get started." But as time passed, my follower count increased, as did my confidence. I bought a better camera, watched online courses on lighting and editing, and my little project began to take shape, something wholly mine. Sophia barged into the room one afternoon while I was filming a low-impact exercise sequence for a new video. "What the hell are you doing?" she said, her gaze jumping from the camera to my you. "Turning our home into your personal TV show now?" I paused the tape, my heart racing, not from the workout but from the confrontation. Yes, I am, actually. There's something important to me. I need something of my own." Sophia grumbled and looked about with scorn. "You think you're some kind of star? Please, get over yourself, Emily." Her words stung, but I was getting better at dealing with her jabs. "Well, it's not like I have your approval for anything else around here. I might as well do one thing I enjoy." Sophia rolled her eyes and marched away, but I didn't stop the camera for long. I resumed my session with a stronger voice than before. My digital profile rose, and so did the prospects. Brands began contacting me, offering free things to include in my movies. Then came the offers to sponsor posts. The first time a brand offered me money to promote their product, I was taken aback. "I can't believe they're paying me for this," I said to Jake over dinner one night, eager to express my delight. "That's great, Emily," he said, his tone preoccupied by his restaurant issues. "Just keep it quiet, okay? Mom and Sophia don't need to know about this." As I returned to the dishes, a notice appeared on my phone. Another comment, another follower. Another step away from their disdain and toward something perfectly commonplace yet utterly mine. "You're doing amazing, Emily. Thanks for sharing your journey." The comment reads, "My channel was no longer just a hobby. It was a thriving business, generating more revenue than Jake's floundering eatery. Soon, I was sending him $2,000 each month to cover household expenses, making it appear like his contribution. Despite my accomplishments, Anna and Sophia continued to treat me as a freeloader. She does nothing around here, just prances about making her silly videos. Anna would spit when she thought I was out of earshot. Sophia repeated her mother's thoughts, adding her own remarks about how I should do more housework, like a real woman. Then Jake's restaurant had a hard period. One evening, he approached me, looking more weary than I'd seen him in months. "Emily, the restaurant needs a cash injection badly. Can you help out?" His eyes were begging. I did not hesitate, transferring $10,000 for what he described as urgent developments. He was truly thankful, but it wasn't long before he started begging for more. "Just another $5,000 for the bills this month," he remarked quietly, almost humiliated. I consented because I could afford it, and he was still my son's father, whom he adored. But deep down, I sensed the imbalance deepening, not just financially, but also in our relationship. Life at Jake's family home was always difficult, but it became awful when Sophia married and brought her husband, Mark, into our home. The house was full, and any sense of solitude or tranquility I had created for myself and my baby evaporated. Suddenly, Anna, never one to mince words, began calling me lazy and a parasite right in front of my face. "You do nothing around here," she'd say as I struggled to balance my online business and keeping an eye on my baby. "Just taking up space." It didn't help that Sophia was expecting her first child, and Anna made it apparent that they wanted more space, hinting that my kid and I were in the way. "Soon there will be another baby in the house, and we can't have freeloaders taking up space," Anna remarked one evening, her gaze drawn to my direction. The atmosphere became cooler. And then, just when things couldn't get much worse, Jake stated that he needed to leave town for a few weeks to handle essential restaurant affairs in another city. He packed up and went, hugging me and our baby goodbye, ignorant to the storm he would leave behind. I attempted to keep things normal by taking my son to school and finishing my videos in the park. However, the day everything actually went apart began like any other until it didn't. After picking up my son from school, we walked home and spoke about his day. But when we turned the corner, my stomach fell. Our stuff was stacked up on the front doorway, including suitcases, bags of clothes, and even my son's toys. Confused and heartbroken, I rang the doorbell. Anna and Sophia approached the window with chilly looks, unmoved by the sight of a mother and kids stranded outside. They opened the door just enough to speak through, but not enough to let us in. "You need to find somewhere else to stay," Anna stated, her voice stern and uncompromising. I looked at her, shocked. "What are you talking about? What about Jake? What will I tell him?" I asked, my voice rising with fear and rage. Sophia chuckled in a nasty, cutting tone. "Tell him whatever you want. He's not here to care, is he?" I frantically tried phoning Jake, but my calls remained unanswered. I had no alternative but to sink deeper into despair and hatred. With no other options, I gathered our belongings and secured a room at a neighboring motel. Sitting in that sterile, darkly lit room with my confused and upset son, I felt something shift inside me. This was more than simply a brief getaway. It was a forced eviction from a life I could no longer bear. I had just finished unpacking our things when my phone vibrated with a new message. Came from Sophia. That was strange. We rarely interacted directly, especially since the fallout. Her message was surprisingly cheerful. "Thought you might want to see what your beloved husband has been up to." A link was also provided. My curiosity piqued. My anxiety increased in my chest. I clicked the link. It redirected me to a social media page with images of Jake, but not on a work trip. The photos showed him cozying up to another woman, having candlelight meals, and strolling down the beach with his arms wrapped around her. The newest photo was time-stamped just yesterday. I sat there numb, my phone slipping slightly from my grip as the realization dawned on me. Jake wasn't only away for business. He was living a completely different life without us. Anger, hot and bitter, welled up inside me. But before I could drown in it, I felt a gentle tug on my sleeve. "Mommy, are you okay?" My son's sweet voice, filled with sincere compassion, drew me back from the edge. I feigned a smile and scooped him up in my arms. "Yeah, buddy, I'm okay. Just a little tired. That's all." I sat there staring at the television, a mix of rage and betrayal running through me. All this time, I had been the financial backbone for Jake's faltering restaurant and his ungrateful family who had essentially discarded me and my baby like garbage. and here he was leading a double life at my expense. My phone buzzed nonstop for the next week with Jake's calls. When I eventually spoke, his voice was filled with false worry. "Emily, where are you guys? I heard about what happened. You should come back. We have bills to sort out, and the restaurant needs more funding." His statements made my blood boil, but I maintained a neutral tone. "Sure, Jake, we can discuss it. I'll come by tomorrow." "Great. I really think it's best to handle these things in person," he said, relieved. After hanging up, I felt a chilly determination settle over me. He had no idea I knew about his affair, and he had no idea I had no intention of being the forgiving wife who paid his debts. Tomorrow's meeting would be pivotal, and I was prepared. Dropping off my son at school that morning felt like the quiet before the storm. As I traveled to my mother-in-law Anna's house, where Jake, Anna, and my pregnant sister-in-law Sophia would be waiting, my stomach churned with nervousness and determination. When I arrived, Jake appeared relieved, if not delighted, to see me, unlike Anna and Sophia, whose expressions were filled with dissatisfaction. I quickly dug out the divorce papers from my suitcase and presented them to Jake. As he scanned the paperwork, his eyes widened in disbelief. Anna and Sophia smirked, believing it was their victory, but when I turned to face them, the smirk evaporated instantly. "Don't be too quick to celebrate," I cautioned, my voice calm but sharp. "You've been living off my efforts all this time." Jake's face dropped as he confessed to them. "The restaurant, it isn't doing well. It hasn't been for a long time." Anna and Sophia's joy faded, replaced by horror and rage. They immediately turned on him, their earlier delight transforming into wrath. "You've been keeping this from us," Anna yelled. "How could you let this happen?" Sophia yelled. They were angry, not at Jake's lies, but at the loss of their financial safety net. Sophia, the arrogant one, scoffed at me. "Well, since Jake makes less than you, he'll just have to file for alimony. How's that for justice?" Jake perked up and nodded enthusiastically, as if he had just discovered a way to win. I nearly chuckled at the stupidity. "That's where you're wrong, Sophia," I corrected, turning to face them both. "And Jake, you won't see a cent from me. Not for alimony, not for anything." Jake's arrogant grin vanished. "What? That's not how this works." "Oh, but it is," I answered, "because I know about the affair." His face lost its color. "How did you?" I tilted my head, pretending innocence. "Your sister sent me everything. Pictures, dates, and locations. Thanks to her, I have all the evidence I need." I gestured to Sophia, whose face had turned pale. The room burst in turmoil. A flurry of accusations, denials, and frantic explanations flew between them. I let them sink in their own muck for a time before I spoke out. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, my voice frigid. "I'm taking back everything I paid for." The room became silent. Every appliance, every piece of furniture, everything. As truth dawned on them, their arguments came to an end. I previously arranged for movers. Anna and Sophia worried as they began carrying away the refrigerator, washing machine, flat-screen television, and even the beautiful blender I had purchased for them last Christmas. "You can't do this," Anna exclaimed, gazing helplessly. "We need those things." I caught her gaze, my tone steady but not harsh. "I did this, and I need them too." The movers kept working, cleaning out about half of the house. As I watched them remove the last of my belongings, I felt lighter than I had in years. A weight lifted from my shoulders. I was no longer obligated to this house, these people, or their deception. I returned my gaze to Jake, who appeared little and forlorn, his hopes for quick money dashed. "Take care of your sister and mother, Jake. That's your job now," I murmured politely, turning to go. As I walked away, I realized it wasn't just a physical departure. It was my final step out of their deceptive clutches, a step toward regaining my life and ensuring a better future for my son and me. Overall, the divorce was a relief rather than a hardship. I battled for compensation for Jake's adultery and obtained alimony for our son. My lawyer handled everything, making the procedure run as smoothly as possible given the circumstances. Jake's family's lives changed considerably as well. Without my financial backing, his restaurant went bankrupt and couldn't survive. The family house was sold to pay off debts, demonstrating their unsustainable lifestyle. Meanwhile, Anna and Sophia scrambled to contact me. Their messages a combination of apologies and desperate begs for aid. Despite everything, I couldn't allow myself to be drawn back into their madness. I immediately blocked their numbers. Sophia's husband abandoned her, and now the entire family, Jake, his mother, his sister, and her child, is crowded into a small rented apartment. They created this difficult position for themselves. In contrast, life for me and Alex is improving. We've fallen into a comfortable routine in our own rented flat, which feels more like home every day. My YouTube channel and Instagram page have taken off, resonating with women, particularly new mothers, who are striving to get back into shape. Seeing the beneficial impact of my work has sparked a new idea: create online fitness courses designed exclusively for postpartum mothers. I'm enthused about the possibilities and the opportunity to assist others who have been in my position. There was a lot to accomplish, but for the first time in a long time, the future appeared bright and full of possibilities. I had a deep feeling of serenity here in our tiny sanctuary, with my son's laughter booming off the walls. We had made it through the storm, and now was our turn to shine. Now on to the next story. Story 7. In labor before my sister's wedding, my mother-in-law locked me in a bathroom to avoid stealing the spotlight. I woke up in the hospital 2 weeks ago. Rick, 30M, and I, 29F, had a daughter, May. We are certainly thrilled to have our first child. As we get used to being new parents, things have been hectic. We're both having a difficult shift, but we're trying our hardest. Unfortunately, given what transpired on the day of May's birth, we are unable to offer much assistance. I don't think I will ever be able to forget it because it was one of the most painful events in my life. The overwhelming terror I experienced that day hasn't been replaced, not even by the happiness of May's arrival. If it weren't for my husband's prompt action, I genuinely think I would have passed away. I'm conflicted. Despite the terrible incident, part of me feels that since it includes family, we need to be kinder to them, particularly as May is the family's eldest child. But because hormones and newborn responsibilities are impairing my judgment, I've turned to Reddit for support. Please be patient with me. There are a lot of characters in this story. The two younger sisters of Rick are Emma, 24F, and Anna, 28F. Both of them and I have always gotten along well, so I don't believe there is any hostility between us. Since each of us is preoccupied with our own lives and occupations, we are not particularly close. Even though Emma lives in a different city, we make an effort to communicate via phone or text whenever possible. My mother-in-law, Rachel, 53F, is another significant character in this tale. I get along well with Emma and Anna, but Rachel and I don't get along. We don't agree, and I genuinely believe she has problems with everyone, not just me. Rachel has an obsession with control. Her responses range from criticism and pouting to full-blown tantrums with tears because she wants things to happen her way. Because she reared them alone after their father left them, her children, including Rick, usually abide by her desires. They make an effort to ease their own and her burdens. Rick allows me to keep my distance and handle his mother any way I see fit because he knows she may be challenging. I've always attempted to leave things be. Even though Rachel can be somewhat controlling, I avoid her since she doesn't like me. Up until a few days ago, when everything went awry, this arrangement worked. Anna was getting married the day May was born. Her husband, Jonah, 30M, is actually Rick's friend, and the wedding was lovely. About a year ago, he proposed to her, and I agreed to be a bridesmaid when Anna asked me to. I had to ask Anna to designate someone else as her maid of honor after Rick and I learned I was expecting. I was aware that I couldn't handle the obligations. This was just 6 months before the wedding and roughly 6 months after her proposal. I was 3 months pregnant at the time. Before informing Anna, I was really anxious. I was afraid that our connection would become permanently strained. I was relieved that didn't occur. When I told Anna the news, she was ecstatic. She even briefly forgot about getting married. Obviously, I'll be taking care of you, she said when I told her that I couldn't perform the duties of maid of honor. She even thought about moving the wedding date so I wouldn't miss it, but that didn't work out. In the end, both sisters continued to work on getting ready for the wedding, with Emma filling in as maid of honor. In spite of this, they found time to help me during my really difficult pregnancy. Anna always stood by me without complaining, but I felt bad for missing her on such a significant day. Rachel, my mother-in-law, was the only one who appeared distressed. The wedding preparations were somewhat disrupted, and I believe she was irritated that I could no longer serve as the maid of honor. Rachel began to act hostilely toward me. While Anna was totally cool with my pregnancy and my absence from bridal chores, it was subtly persistent. I chose to dismiss it, assuming it was just her wedding stress or my hormones. The wedding day came 2 weeks ago. By that time, my feet were swollen, my abdomen was enormous, and I was severely pregnant. Anna wanted me there, so even though I was tired and felt like I could faint, I wanted to go. In order to avoid detracting from her special day, I had asked her in advance if my presence would pose any problems. I even had the thought that she was offended. Anna informed me that she only wanted her family to be there to support her and that she didn't care about fame or attention. She urged me to go and not be concerned about any drama. I trusted Anna because I knew how direct she was, and I felt obligated to support her despite my physical discomfort. I won't lie, there were a lot of whispers and murmurs regarding my presence on Anna's wedding day. I knew Anna was glad I was there, so I tried my best to ignore them. That was all I cared about at the time. But Rachel didn't talk to me very often. The whole time she scowled at me. I was too uneasy to pay any attention. I left her alone because I lacked the energy to confront her or figure out why she was acting in such a passive-aggressive manner. I wasn't going to react, so she could glare all she wanted. Then came the major incident, which really startled me and everyone else. I began to feel nervous just before the ceremony started. After meeting Anna, I went upstairs in the hopes of feeling better before going back. I had no idea that Rachel had been following me. I went to the bathroom because I felt weird and sweaty. My water suddenly burst. It was a real deluge. Immediately, panic struck. My baby had arrived at the worst possible time. Despite the fact that I love her more than anything, I was attempting to think clearly while crouched in agony when Rachel suddenly materialized in front of me. We had to get to the hospital, so I ordered her to grab my phone and call Rick right away. Rachel escorted me to the restroom and took a seat for me. I trusted her to act appropriately, so I gave her my phone. She lost it at that point because she didn't want me to steal Anna's spotlight. Rachel said she would make sure Rick arrived after the ceremony. Shocked, I questioned if she was crazy and told her that I couldn't endure this for an hour. She took the phone with her and locked me in the bathroom when I tried to get it back. There I was, sitting on a toilet in a restroom, in labor, very pregnant, without a spouse or phone. I managed to avoid having a full-blown panic attack. What might have happened if I had is unknown to me. I stood up and walked to the door, yelling for assistance and hammering on it. However, nobody heard me because everyone was sitting for the wedding, and the restroom was on the first level. I yelled until I could no longer be heard, but nobody arrived. At that point, I genuinely believed that I would pass away and that my child would follow me in death. I finally passed out, exhausted, sweating profusely, and without a voice. I don't recall anything else after that. Hours later, I awoke in the hospital. Rick was crying beside me. It took me a moment to figure out where I was and what was going on. I expected the worst when I saw Rick crying, and everything that had happened to me before, Rachel locking me in the bathroom and my calls for assistance, came flooding back. I believed May had not arrived. When Rick saw I was awake, he let out a breath of relief and began sobbing in my arms. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach and felt overpowered. The nurse then entered carrying a baby girl. I let out a sigh of comfort. There will never be a better moment than the first time I held my baby. Since I didn't have the energy to digest everything at that point, I was thankful that Rick didn't give me any details. I could hear some noise outside the hospital room, though. Rick explained that his mother was outside and wanted to come in to see her granddaughter when I asked him what was happening. I filled him in on everything, including Rachel's actions and how she needlessly put our daughter at risk. Furthermore, I made it plain that I would never permit her to get close to my daughter. She was dead to me. Rick said he already knew everything and nodded. Rachel had sobbed and told him everything when he discovered me in that way. I informed him that I would not forgive her because of her breakdown. Rick chuckled and declared that Rachel was dead to him as well. From this moment on, he declared that he would go to court to make sure she was punished and that he intended to prosecute her with endangering her life. I felt as though a burden had been removed when I heard that. Rick and his brothers all love his mother, so I know that he does, but I wasn't in the mood to forgive her after what she had done, which might have cost me and May our lives. Our marriage would have been finished if Rick had sided with his mother instead of me. After that, there would have been no turning back. Given everything she had given up to raise them, I secretly feared he might support her. However, Rick defended me and I am very appreciative. If it's possible, it increased my love for him. I inquired about Rick's wedding experience. "It's okay," he answered, adding that Anna and Emma were waiting for his call to come see us. He laughed and assured me not to worry when I inquired if Anna was upset. When Anna said that May's birth was the greatest present she could have gotten on her wedding day, she was ecstatic and beaming with pride. I cried when I heard that, and I told Rick to call them right away. Jonah, Emma, and Anna arrived at the hospital in a matter of minutes. The best aspect: Jonah and Anna were still dressed for their wedding. There was no way Anna was going to miss the opportunity to take a wedding photo with her niece. I began to cry. It was a very touching moment. I apologized to Anna for spoiling her day. After the photo, she gave me a big hug and told me that I was mistaken and that I had brightened her day. After that, I informed Anna about Rachel's actions. Since we made the pregnancy public, the only thing I did wrong, according to Anna, was not notifying them sooner. She was enraged. She thought that Rachel's drama could have been avoided. Emma added that any amount of trouble was okay as long as I was safe. After I clarified that I didn't want to start any, my eyes still well up with tears as I typed this. I realized then that they actually loved me as a member of their family, not simply Rick's wife. One of the most amazing people I've ever met is Anna. She's safe, kind, and incredibly happy. Understandably, she has achieved great success in life. How Rachel became so different from her kids is beyond me. It seems as though they chose to act in the exact opposite way after witnessing her actions. It's strange, but I no longer give a damn. The moment was lovely. Rachel, meanwhile, remained outside on the walkway. Anna assured her that she would personally see to it that Rick and I filed charges. I didn't want Rachel close to me, but she still wanted to come in to meet May. According to Anna, we must protect ourselves from Rachel. She also expressed regret, believing she had not done enough to clarify that she had no issue with my pregnancy or to allay her mother's overly protective tendencies. Anna thought that perhaps the incident could have been prevented if she had been more outspoken. I informed Anna that she was not at fault and that she had made me feel protected. Rick was outside conversing with Rachel the entire time. Rick shared his conversation with Rachel with me after I was released from the hospital and brought May home a few days later. He told her that nothing would alter his decision and that he would be filing charges. He also informed her that she was not regarded as May's grandma in any way and would never be permitted to be a part of her life for a perceived offense that didn't even bother her. Rachel's actions had put our unborn child and my life at risk. Additionally, Rick stated that he would drastically cut back on the financial assistance that Rachel had been receiving from him and Emma. Rachel broke down in tears at that time, saying she didn't deserve this treatment because she had slaved away her whole life for her kids. Rick strongly asserted that her acts did not provide her authority over their life. Even though he respected the sacrifices she had made, he acknowledged that he had been overlooking or justifying her actions for years, but that was no longer the case with May and me. Given that Anna had never objected to my attending her wedding, Rachel had gone too far and demonstrated that she was dangerous to be around. After that, Rachel attempted to defend her behavior by claiming that she was attempting to keep Anna safe and didn't want me stealing the spotlight. However, Anna heard this and scolded Rachel, stating unequivocally that she had never felt that way. We are moving on with the lawsuit, but Rick is taking care of it because I can't handle the extra stress of caring for a newborn. Rick has stated unequivocally that none of the siblings are interested in continuing to be friends with Rachel. Emma only talks to her when it's absolutely necessary, and Anna has shut her off totally. Naturally, Rick and I are also no contact. Rachel probably didn't expect this backlash. As perverse as that seems, it's possible that she truly believed she was defending Anna. I'm not justifying her in the slightest, but I feel sorry for her since things went so wrong. I'm wondering now if we ought to discuss it with her. I feel awful and wrong about it, but perhaps I'm not thinking straight. I'm aware that Rick will become irate if I bring this up to him. He can't even look at Rachel at the moment since he is so angry with her. I didn't think this rift would be this deep, but here we are. Update 1. Well, there is no possibility of reconciliation, never again. Being a new mother has kept me quite busy, which is why I haven't posted in a while. I haven't had much time for anything else because I've been so busy taking care of myself and my daughter. The good news is that we are all very enthusiastic about May's impending 8-week birthday. Rick and I have benefited much from the assistance of Anna and Jonah. Emma contacts us nearly every day, but she had to go back to work. Everyone's lives are brightened by May, and her photos are all over our group chat. Rachel has not been contacted since we already have too much on our plate, and filing charges would be pointless. I persuaded Rick not to do so since none of us has the energy to handle the matter at this time. Rick reluctantly consented. Rachel seemed appreciative when we informed her of this choice last week. I use the word appeared because the woman is genuinely insane, and she soon revealed her true nature to everyone. Rick and I got up at around 1 a.m. last week to a booming knock on the door. Rick went to open the door, but I fled and hid with May because I assumed it was a robbery. Although I could hear shouting, I was afraid to venture out for fear of waking May. My mother-in-law, Rachel, was the one who did it. According to Rick, she was acting irrationally, yelling that we couldn't keep her away and that she needed to see May. She finally backed off after Rick threatened to call the police. She had been attempting to enter the residence by force. We thought that something might be wrong with her and that everyone needed to know, so we contacted Emma and Anna right at once. But our worry didn't last long. Rachel texted us unsettlingly the following day. She began by saying that we were punishing her for being a mother by denying her access to May, calling us nasty and horrid. The text soon became erratic and theatrical. She discussed the challenges of parenting 3 children and how she had to put one child's needs ahead of another at all times. She used the excuse that she didn't want May to ruin Anna's wedding to defend her actions on May's birthday. Rachel deliberately disregarded the fact that Anna had constantly emphasized that she had no issue with the pregnancy and wedding taking place at the same time and that May was actually a fetus at the time. I initially made an effort to comprehend her viewpoint. Then, though, her text became more sinister. Rachel said that she was concerned that her children would no longer value her as much now that May was in our lives. She said that she had thought Anna would be angry about the pregnancy because, as she put it, that's what a normal woman would feel. However, she didn't like it when she saw us all thrilled about the wedding and the pregnancy. She wanted us to be envious and competitive instead of pleased that we were happy for each other. Rachel continued by saying that she felt devalued because May had replaced her as her children's unifying factor. She also said that she had anticipated Anna would snap at her for drawing attention away from the wedding because of May's birth. Rachel felt supplanted when it didn't occur and May was the only topic of conversation. I was no longer able to read by this time, telling Rick that she was insane and dangerous for all of us. I requested him to ban her number. Since reading those texts, I've been suffering from a persistent headache. How a 50-year-old woman could compete with a 7-week-old infant is beyond me. I don't get it, and to be honest, I'm done attempting to figure out why she does it. Both Emma and Anna were similarly horrified when we shared Rachel's messages with them. They hypothesized that she might be experiencing a manic episode. Emma even volunteered to fly down and have a facility evaluate Rachel. I acknowledged that it was a smart concept, but I made it plain that I no longer wanted to interact with Rachel. Her actions were too risky and unpredictable. Update 2. Rachel is currently the subject of a restraining order. We are exercising caution, even though she hasn't tried anything since the late-night event. Emma carried out her plan, consulted a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and had Rachel tested. Although Rachel's behavior had no underlying medical cause, She was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. The next course of action recommended by the specialists was therapy. Emma made the decision to cut all communication with Rachel following this disclosure. She stated that she would be happy to assist if Rachel had a medical condition, but Emma can no longer put up with her now that it is obvious that her acts are motivated by hatred. I share the sentiment and fully comprehend it. If Rachel's behavior had been the result of a real mental illness, I might have felt some pity for her, but we can't make amends with her now that we know this is just who she is. The purpose of the restraining order is to protect Rick, May, and myself. Rachel has shown herself to be unsafe on 2 occasions, and her particular animosity against May makes her much more hazardous. We cannot compromise on keeping her away from our family. This, I believe, will be my last update. I hope I never have to talk about this whole experience again. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I reluctantly agreed to an open marriage with my wife when I fell in love with a coworker. My ex lost control and tried to ruin everything. I, 47, have been married to Lisa, 42, for 17 years. However, we only lived together for roughly 7 years. A decade ago, I discovered Lisa cheating on me, and she admitted that she had fallen out of love and desired an open marriage. We have 2 children. The older was a toddler and the younger was still a baby when this occurred. It was heartbreaking to me. She stated that having back-to-back pregnancies had a negative impact on her physical and emotional health, and she wished to freshen up. Unfortunately, her method of relaxation was to bring various men into bed. Divorce was complicated at that stage. With 2 small children and a meager income, I decided to let her live her life as I relocated upstairs in our duplex home. We became co-parents for our children. It wasn't as hunky-dory as it seems. We split up with a lot of hatred and name-calling, largely from me since she cheated, but soon we got caught up in work and life, and I moved on and became more relaxed. A few months ago, I met Kathy, 35F, at work. She's my junior and we hit it off immediately. Bonding with her felt more natural than anything I'd experienced in a long time. It wasn't a romantic connection at first. We connected as understanding coworkers and spent time together outside of work, still simply as friends. We made out last month and I had a unique feeling for her. She has been crashing at my apartment on a regular basis since then, which technically affects my wife. Lisa is still my wife and we are still married. Lisa has been acting strangely these days. Kathy hangs out with me and attempts to command authority like a wife. I had to remind her that we are separated, and I can live my life as she has for years. It is difficult to express what she has been doing, but I will try. Kathy and I were eating dinner one evening in my kitchen. Lisa arrived and asked, "Can I join you guys?" It became an extremely awkward time for both of us. Kathy and I gazed at each other, surprised. Lisa sat down with her dish without waiting for a response. We ate supper like strangers, smiling politely despite Lisa's forced chat. Our supper was ruined, but I gave Lisa the benefit of the doubt, believing she was simply trying to fit in. Then there was another incident in which she was bossy, attempting to impose her rights as a wife. Kathy and I were upstairs watching a movie when Lisa barged in and requested me to join her. When I questioned what was wrong, she answered, "Your children need you. The younger one needs your assistance with a scientific project." I was surprised since we had divided the schoolwork. I help the older child, and she takes care of the smaller. I informed her that I had already done my part for our eldest kid, and that this was now her responsibility. She became enraged and exclaimed, "Is this kid not yours? Instead of assisting him, you're here lurking." This resulted in a full-blown confrontation between Lisa and me. Kathy, feeling embarrassed, excused herself and left. Kathy told me after that episode that she would no longer hang out at my apartment, though we continued to meet at hers. But why should I sacrifice my life when I've never touched hers? She's been living her life her way, bringing whatever male she wants into the house, and I've always looked the other way. Lisa is purposely attempting to break the link I've formed with someone. I addressed Lisa the other day, and she replied she wasn't worried by my close relationship with Kathy. She refused to accept actions, claiming I was overthinking. I informed her that if she continued to intervene in my life, I would consider getting divorced. She had tears in her eyes and apologized for disturbing us. She was only worried about our son's unfinished assignment and was preoccupied with her work, so she asked me for assistance. I claimed it wasn't a call for help. It was nothing short of gaslighting. She then contacted Kathy, apologized, and invited her to come over. Kathy accepted the apologies but set boundaries, explaining that she preferred to meet me at her home. I am currently in a difficult situation. I want to get rid of Lisa, but I'm worried she'll destroy my growing connection with Kathy. I'm thinking of obtaining a divorce. The only reason I didn't file for divorce back then was that I didn't want my children to have to pick between their mother and father. Now I'm contemplating if I should go forward with it and prioritize myself over everyone else, including my children. Should I wait a few years for my children to grow up before making a move? I'm not sure Kathy will wait for me till then. Oh, I'm still upset with Lisa over her decision to open the marriage. I'm also upset with myself for agreeing with her and not pushing back enough. Edit. Apologies for all of the jargon and missing facts, particularly on Lisa's adultery and our separation dynamics. People say it's tough to give counsel without clarity, so here it is. It'll be long, so skip it if you don't want to learn about the past. This was roughly 10 years ago, so I may have missed a few specifics. Lisa began acting up 4 months after our younger kid was born. She wouldn't let me get close and said she wasn't ready for sex. Pregnancy and breastfeeding had made her wary of closeness. I supported her decision, but we were slipping apart emotionally. I recommended we go to couples therapy, but she dismissed it, saying it was simply her postpartum phase and she'd recover shortly. It took almost a year before I lost patience and addressed her, stating that we needed to address the elephant in the room. She either attended therapy with me or gave me the truth about what was wrong. She gaslighted me, accusing me of being insensitive and other nonsense, but I refused to let it go this time and probed for the truth. I snooped through her phone but found nothing definite because she had deleted the majority of the chats and emails. I'm not sure how I got the clue, but one day she mentioned she was going shopping with her pals. I followed her automobile and discovered her infidelity. She was sleeping with a young college student. I knocked rather than barged into his residence. Lisa was on the couch in her lingerie, trying to cover herself when a shirtless guy responded. I grabbed the guy by the neck and was ready to strike him when Lisa interfered, pleading with me to leave him alone. She cried, saying it wasn't his fault. He was only one of the guys she was hooking up with. It blew my mind. What the heck? One of the guys? She admitted to hooking up with several guys. The guy standing in front of me had no idea what was going on or that she was married with children. We returned home, and I did everything any man in my position would do. No, I don't hit. I'm not a violent man. I contacted her parents and confessed the facts in front of everyone. I insisted on the divorce. I even engaged a lawyer and discussed the case. But as things went, the lawyer revealed the truth, which shook me. There was no genuine benefit for me, only loss. Because the kids were so young, they'd require their mother. At most, I could gain joint custody, but Lisa would have to allow me to meet with them and dictate the terms. Yes, I could take her to court if she didn't follow the court order, but how often does a man want to become engaged in legal battles? We live in a no-fault state, so there is no moral policing for her. I still have to pay alimony, and child support is required. So, basically, I handle all of the tasks of a father, but I rely on Lisa to spend time with my children. Lisa, on the other hand, was opposed to divorce. She proposed that rather than divorcing, we open our marriage and return to each other whenever we wanted. I knew I never wanted her back, but divorce was too expensive at the time. The only practical choice was to separate and live as housemates and co-parents with our children. So we did it. Though she calls it an open marriage or whatever she wants, I consider it a failed strategy, and we have parted. Lisa has been with several partners over the last 10 years, though she claims she had no significant relationships with any of them. I believe she had at least 3 sexual partners. They visited our house, and she went trekking and on vacation with them. It was difficult for me to see her bringing different guys into our home. First her adultery, then her multiple partners in our bedroom. We own a duplex house. I moved to the guest bedroom upstairs. The stairs leading to it are accessible through the back door. We bought the property from an Asian couple who built it so their grown-up son could live upstairs in peace. Unfortunately, the son moved out, and the couple sold it to us since it was too big for them. The main entry to the house leads into a living room with a large, closed kitchen, a dining area, a master bedroom, and a pantry that we converted into our children's room. Upstairs, there is a guest room the same size as the master bedroom, and the rest of the space is dedicated to a huge library area for reading and hosting parties. That space leads to the roof of the home, which has a little patio. Since I was moved upstairs, I could see much of what was going on downstairs. I hoped I could close my eyes, but for my children's sake, I remained attentive. I initially joined the dating scene, but after a few months, it felt hollow and useless. I discontinued it and concentrated on other important matters. I joined a badminton club to improve my athletic body. I had been a sports fan in college, so I returned to playing field games on weekends. I also joined a hiking club that plans solo hikes every 2 months. You cannot bring a friend, spouse, or someone you know. You hike alone, and there are others who do as well. It was tremendous fun. I did that for 2 years straight and now only do it twice a year. I've had a few hookups over the last 10 years, but no emotional affairs or long-term relationships. I didn't feel connected to anyone else. Kathy's situation is different. I feel good around her. She's the woman I believe I can give love another chance with. But now Lisa, the devil of my life, has returned to hunt me down. The scenario remains the same. Kathy refuses to come to my apartment. I'm concerned she'll withdraw herself from me, and I don't want to lose her. The scenario forces me to choose between Kathy and my children, and I'm having difficulty making a decision. Update 1. Hello everyone. Thank you for all your suggestions and remarks. I appreciate everything, good and terrible. I sought therapy, which greatly aided me in determining my focus point and what I want out of life at this time. As several of you mentioned, the children are nearing their teen years, so it will only be a matter of a few years before they leave to lead their own lives. It makes no sense to pass up my chance to be happy with Kathy. I had an open discussion with Kathy. I told her about my feelings. I told her I wanted to be with her, and if she felt the same way, we could work things out. She claims she feels the same way but is hesitant due to my family dynamics. She simply does not feel comfortable around my legal wife. She is fine with the youngsters surrounding me, however. I said I could figure this out. I'm going to move out and the kids can choose where they want to live. They are mature enough to make that choice, and they can alternate between mom and dad's. Kathy agreed with the plan. My therapist proposed counseling for the children, in which they might be informed of our marital status in an age-appropriate way. Lisa flipped out when I informed her about the counseling. She stated I was being selfish and damaging our children's life by getting serious with Kathy, and that I should put my family first over my own selfish goals. I lost my cool at that. I asked, "Really, Lisa? Are you the one advocating family values and morality? What happened to your ethics while you were getting knocked up by various men when your children were still breastfeeding and rolling in their cribs?" I asked her to back off and brought them to the counselor. It was useful. The children responded well and appreciated that we had banded together for their cause. They also agreed that I deserved to be happy for the rest of my life. I informed Lisa that I would be filing for divorce. She pretended to be surprised and began sobbing. She stated, "I thought we decided never to divorce and to be together throughout. Now that you have found this woman, you are leaving your family to be with her. I've also met a lot of men who wanted to marry me, but I never gave up my married life for them." I responded, "Stop trying to guilt-trip me. This is not helping. Cut the shit and sign the paperwork. I'll be paying for the children's education until college, and you can retain the house and the car. This will be your alimony. I will be moving out. I am prioritizing my pleasure over money because I can now afford it. Back then, I couldn't." She cried and tried everything she could to convince me out of getting divorced. She stated I could move out and live with Kathy while still married to her. I said, "I adore Kathy and do not want her to be dubbed my mistress. I know no one calls her that, but you would. You can go to any length to humiliate others. The paperwork should arrive any day soon. I'm moving in with Kathy next month. I am waiting for my children's annual tests to be completed. I'll be taking them on a trip and then moving out. I'll feel relieved when everything is settled. Update 2. I'm telling you, this woman is a true piece of work. As I said in my previous report, I was on holiday with the children. This woman seized the opportunity to carry out her nasty scheme. Lisa wept her way to Kathy, telling her to back off. She informed her that she was breaking up our family and that our children would suffer as a result. Lisa attempted to guilt Kathy, but when Kathy refused, Lisa said that I wasn't serious about her and that she was simply a fling for me. Lisa is a cunning, ruthless woman. She knows precisely how to play her cards. She knew I was in a low-network zone with the kids, so she promised not to call me, and she didn't. If Kathy had been any other woman, she would have freaked out at the fling phrase, but she remained calm and waited for my return. She had my hotel number but did not bother me. That's what I admire about her. She's a confident woman despite my complicated situation. When I arrived home and learned of Lisa's spiteful move, I marched up to her door and yelled at her. I should have done this sooner to get the garbage out of her mind. Her entitled behavior has gone too far, and no one will tolerate it any longer. I have moved out of my house. My children have also decided to stay with me, but we do not have a spare room. Therefore, I'm looking for a larger property to accommodate them. Until then, kids are remaining with their mother. When I was moving out, Lisa performed a variety of tantrums, ranging from guilt-tripping to ranting, gaslighting to sobbing, and pleading for another opportunity. She asked me to give our relationship one more chance. I told her that our relationship had ended 10 years ago. We were only housemates and co-parents. The truth is, I've moved on from loving her. She is nothing to me. I love Kathy and want to spend the rest of my life with her. When Lisa received the divorce papers, she tore them up. My lawyer had to issue her a letter threatening to sue her for destroying a legal document. Only then did she calm down and consent to sign them. The divorce proceedings are ongoing. I haven't followed up on my soon-to-be ex-wife since then. I went to pick up my children twice but did not enter the home. Yes, several of you inquired about my children's ages. They are now 11 and 13, mature enough to understand the divorce and separation. Update 3. I am pleased to inform you that my soon-to-be ex-wife, STBX, is now officially my ex-wife. The main point of this update is that the divorce is finalized, and my children have moved in with me. They will visit their mother every 2 weeks or whenever they wish. The last month has been hectic, renting a house and relocating belongings. We didn't tell Lisa about the kids moving in with me until I rented a new house. We all knew she'd be upset, so we decided to wait as long as possible before telling her. The kids advised packing their bags and sneaking off with me when Lisa wasn't looking, but I chose to handle things legally. I did not want to get into another argument with that woman. According to our divorce agreement, we must give each other 3 days' notice if we intend to take the children for more than 2 days. So, I returned home and informed Lisa that the children wanted to live with me and that I would pick them up in 3 days. As expected, she freaked out. Fortunately for us, she did not become violent, breaking things and all, which would have made things easier for us. Instead, she took the emotional way. She held the children, cried, apologized for everything, and begged them not to leave her. She did her best to emotionally manipulate them into staying with her. She was even successful with the younger child, who stated that he wanted to stay with Mama. Kathy had warned me that circumstances like these may occur, so I was expecting a last-minute change of heart. When my younger kid called, I told him, "Cool, Dad loves you no matter what." But my oldest son was strong in his choice to move out, so I answered, "Sure, I'll pick you up." I'm not sure what happened in the meantime, but when I went to pick him up, both boys were prepared with their luggage. I hugged both of them and led them away. I didn't inquire as to what had occurred. It was already upsetting enough for them, and I didn't want to further the situation. Kathy and I are attempting to make them feel at ease in our new home. We're involving them in the process of setting up their rooms, ensuring that everything matches their preferences. I expected Lisa to make one more effort to stop the children from leaving the house, but she had already given up. She simply sat there crying and screaming. She hugged the boys firmly, apologized for her actions, and assured them that she loved them. She stated they were welcome to return to Mama whenever they pleased. Before I departed, she asked if I had time for coffee. Her appeal sounded innocent and sincere, so I accepted. Her tone conveyed regret, and she apologized. This time, it did not sound false. She confessed, "I was delusional all along, thinking you would never leave me. When Kathy entered your life, I did not see her as a threat. I assumed she was simply one of those flings that will die out in a month. I believe I took you for granted because of the safety you gave for me and the kids despite everything I did to you. I didn't realize I was mean and narcissistic until it was too late. I simply smiled and hid my emotions. I rose up to leave, and she approached to hug me. I hugged her back. This was our first hug in 10 years. I can't really absorb how I felt about it, and I can't describe how I feel today following our final talk. I'm not pleased or sad, just numb. That's how it is. My life has changed dramatically during the previous 6 to 7 months. I suppose it will take time for me to process everything. Thank you all for your help. You've been the best. If anything changes from here, I may update the thread. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.